But wait for him to say go. Hold on.
Okay. I'm waiting. Better. Did he say go?
Yep.
All right. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GLC 30A, paragraph 18, the governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation number of people may gather in one place as extended on June 15th, 2021, with governor signing the Senate bill S2475, public bodies suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, allowing public bodies greater flexibility in utilizing technology in the conduct of meetings under the open meeting law. This meeting of the Peabody Conservation Commission will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access proceedings in real time. And what's in the drink?
Sure.
Water's fine.
You know, okay.
Okay. No in-person attendance of the members of the public will be permitted. Every effort will be made to ensure public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. Individuals may participate remotely in the meeting via remote. And if people that are online wish to speak, raise your hand so we can see you. The Access TV will be airing this meeting live. I don't know what, channel 9, as well as streaming on their Facebook and YouTube platforms. So tonight we want to welcome Vice Chairman Rizzo, Secretary Mike Vivaldo, Amanda Green, Arthur Athos, and myself, Chairman Stuart Lazaris. And we begin. We have certificates of compliance to start. And this stuff gets whatever. I'll just kind of blow through these because items 1, 2, and 1 and 2 are the request for full certificate of compliance made by attorney Matthew Snell on behalf of Stoll for DEP 55312 and 55323. Both these have been, attorneys, Matthew Snell has requested a continuance. And item 3.
Can I get a motion on number 1 and 2? You can do the motion together for 55312 and 55323 to both be continued until May.
Do I hear a motion?
I'll make that motion. So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, I'm gonna do a roll call. So there's a motion on the floor made by Chairman Rizzo, seconded by Secretary Vivaldi to continue both items number 1 and 2, DEP file number 55-312 and DEP file number 55-323. The address on both is 13 Corwin Street. I'm going to go ahead and do a roll call. Chairman Lazaris.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Rizzo.
Yes.
Secretary Vivaldi.
Yes.
Commissioner Green.
Yes.
Commissioner Athos.
Yes.
All right, so that passes 5-0. Both are continued until May. And the next item you don't have to read because it's already continued until May,
Okay.
166 Main Street. So we should be all set with that one.
Okay, the first one that we did, items 1 and 2, correct me if I'm wrong, but they're still waiting for some sort of approval from City Council.
Yep, I believe they still haven't gotten their special permit that they told you,
Okay.
you guys were holding them up.
We are, we're not.
You were in December, but not anymore.
Okay. All right, notice of intent. Public hearing on a notice of intent submitted by Hancock Associates for Michael Larkin at 40 Oak Street Development LLC. Proposed work is site improvements and redevelopment, which includes a 40B housing project, paved vehicular and pedestrian access, landscaped areas, connections to municipal utility services, and a stormwater management system. Property is known as 40 Oak Street, map 95, lot 89X, Peabody, Mass. We are looking for, there's a DPS memo that's looking for us to get a third-party peer review. And it's in a flood zone. I mean, it's like,
I think they're planning on giving a presentation tonight, and then I know that there's a group of neighbors, so we definitely want to open the hearing, have them give a presentation, and then open it to the public. I've promoted Devin Morse. Did I pronounce your name right, Devin?
Yes, you did.
From VHB Hancock?
From just Hancock. And then if we could also promote Joseph Pesnola,
Okay.
he's going to be the lead on the project. That would be great. Thank you,
Great.
Misha.
And
okay, go ahead.
I also promoted Michael Larkin. I believe he is the applicant. Please correct me if I'm wrong. And is there anyone else in the audience that you need me to promote?
I don't believe so. Michael, is your attorney on or no? Okay, great.
Good evening.
Good evening.
For the record, Joe Pesnola from Hancock Associates. I'm representing Michael Larkin, who is the applicant. And as you heard, Devin Morse, our wetland scientist, is also with us. This is a project that has been moving its way through the ZBA for some time. Full disclosure, it is currently under appeal, and the applicant is working with the city and the ZBA to mediate a resolution to that. Part of the discussion on the mediation was from the city's part was a request for us to file this notice of intent with the Conservation Commission so that the city could fully understand the input from the commission to make sure that your wants and desires and commentary on the project got to the degree it needed to get brought into that resolution could be done. So that's just kind of putting it in the framework. This is a project that is being permitted under Mass General Law, Chapter 40B. With that, the Peabody Local Wetlands Bylaw ordinance is subsumed into the ZBA process. So we have only filed under the State Wetlands Act here for this notice of intent. So we're asking the commission to consider this solely under the State Act. The jurisdictional areas that we're dealing with here are bordering land subject to floodplain, as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman. The site is, if I might share my screen, I can bring up the plans, or if Lucia could bring up the plans, however that's best done. I guess share.
Yep, I gave you permission. You should be able to.
Excellent. Can everyone see that?
Yeah.
So it is the site is located at 40 Oak Street. It is the old Elk site. It is a 70,000 square foot parcel. It is currently made up of pretty much entire pavement and building for the 70,000 square feet. There is some green area down in front towards the street. But that is the site that we're under. With regards to existing topography, it's fairly flat. There's a low point in the kind of in the north central part of the site where there is an existing municipal drain line that runs through the site from Little's Lane and Elliott Place through to Oak Street, and then runs northerly down Oak Street. And I will get into some more details in a bit about that drainage system and what's been done to it and what is being done to it. So the project is to build a 54 unit building that will have parking at grade level underneath. There'll be in the central area towards the Oak Street side lobby. There'll be two stair towers in the front of the building, in the back of the building. On the front of the building, there'll be a patio up at the upper level with a walkway system that brings us down to the street level, and that is both for the residents and also for fire access to that residential level. So the residential level is above the floodplain. The floodplain elevation is elevation 27. Generally, the elevations on site are in the 21, 22 range. So the first floor residential is above that. All of the mechanicals and support systems for the units will also be up there. And again, all that will touch the ground as enclosed spaces will be the elevator lobby and the stair towers. Everything else will be wide open for floodwaters to pass in and out of. So it's what's known as a flow through building when and if the flood event would come. We are proposing about 100 parking spaces, both under the building and around the surface. We are going to take up the back of the lot, take up the existing pavement, and develop some open space that'll have both active recreation with a tot lot and a dog park, and just passive open space there. During we did at one time, you may have seen a version of this plan that had some townhouses back in this area, 8 units. During the mitigation, those units were removed. The associated parking was removed, and the open space was developed. Additionally, we have committed to additional flood mitigation, if you will, or something to add above and beyond what we're required to do, and what we previously committed to do with regards to our stormwater system. And we're going to cull out this area a little bit, drop the elevation, tie it into the municipal system so that it could be an additional relief valve, an additional amount of floodwater storage during the peak events. So when I get into the stormwater, I'll explain why our system in general is improving the situation, both from the standpoint of stormwater, but also in flood control. And this addition that's new to the project will just go a little bit beyond that. So we do have a marked reduction in impervious on site, and that will assist with recharge, putting water back into the ground. We also are proposing a an underground recharge system in the front under a landscaped area that will take our roof drainage and try to put that back into the ground also. So let's talk a little bit about why we're here and the resource area that we are that we trigger need for your approval, and that is bordering land subject to flooding. Excuse me. Again, the base flood elevation per the FEMA mapping is elevation 27.0. And while we have listened to and heard quite a bit of commentary about flooding in general in the area of the Elks parking lot, and what's happened in the past with regards to flooding events up here, notwithstanding the major flooding that I know Peabody experiences in the downtown area. What anecdotally has been told to us with regards to historic flooding in the Elks parking lot, it has been in the range of 6 inches or a foot. And again, the elevation of the existing parking lot is 21-22. So we're talking 20-22-23 have been the normal flooding events, but FEMA says, and we have to abide by, the elevation 27. So what happens, there is some interplay between these flooding events and the municipal drainage system in the area. When very early on in discussions with Mr. Pollitt, the city engineer, and in reviewing the project, he was looking for us to do some investigative work on the drainage system in Oak Street. We did that. We did some cammering, we did some cleaning of the lines, and we did get some feedback during the year and a half we were in the ZBA process that seemed to have helped the drainage system, but the drainage system does have some inadequacies. And that manifests itself in localized flooding, going back to the existing conditions plan in this catch basin right here, flooding out this area, which is a low-lying area at elevation 21. So in the existing condition, there is a capacity of the site to hold water. And that's working in concert with the municipal drain system. So it's almost like it's a detention area built into the municipal system. So our starting point in doing our stormwater design was to take that volume that happens that above the surface and put it below the surface, so that we didn't deprive the municipal system of that storage, because if we did, there'd be more problems downgrading it. And that on those small storm events that caused this large puddle to happen on the Elk site, that wouldn't happen on our site, that we would put that underground and it wouldn't be a nuisance to our residents. Then from there, we had to add volume to that to handle any attenuation that's required for peak flow from the site. The original piping systems, municipal piping systems and stormwater systems weren't designed back in the day to the rigors that we're required to. We're required to look at everything up to and including the 100-year storm event. So our system is designed to do that, so that when we're all done, the amount of water leaving the site and going into the Oak Street system is less, and that what happens during these storm events is better for the area. And from the standpoint of our site, we don't have any parking lot nuisance flooding. So we are making slight grading changes to the parking lot to develop the low points, move them around a little bit. But in total, when we look at compensatory storage incrementally as is required by the wetlands regulations, we don't have, we're not losing any storage volume. We're actually gaining volume in some of the reaches, and we're also adding this additional volume underground that's not counted in our compensatory storage calculations because it's underground, but it does play into the factors and as far as how the system works during various storm events. What we also have to compensate for from the flood volume standpoint is the stair tower, the lobby, and the other stair tower, as well as the columns that come down that are designated by these dots and squares inside the building. That's the structure of the columns that come down, the 2 foot by 2 foot. So each of those hitting the ground between elevation 21, 22, and 27 is a flood volume that's lost. And in the demolition of the building, which is a volume that is now not floodplain, because the water goes around the building and not into it, the Elks building currently. We factor all of that in, and the calculations that were provided within our package demonstrate that we're not losing any flood line. Again, we're gaining a little bit. The balance of the stormwater system has to do with the compliance with the DEP regulations for treatment. Where there's no treatment now, we're providing full treatment. Recharge, where there's little to no recharge being provided now, we again have this underground system that takes the roof drainage. So we're meeting the recharge requirements, and again, the attenuation, that the amount of water that leaves the site is no more than the existing site. And that is true for all storms, the 2-year, 10-year, 25-year, and 100. The basic details of this design were worked out painstakingly in close cooperation with Mr. Politz, the city engineer, and a third-party peer reviewer, Horsley Witten, Ms. Janet Bernardo, working for the city. Mr. Politz felt that this application with the changes, with the little bit of changes, needed to make sure and go back through peer review, and that's why he suggested, as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, engaging third-party peer review. Horsley Witten, Ms. Bernardo has been re-engaged. Mr. Larkin has provided a check to the city for $3,500 as was the proposal for that. And we hope that, that peer review will be accomplished in short order, most likely between this meeting and hopefully the next meeting, affirming that nothing that we changed within this design is impacting the conclusion that came to during the ZBA process, that yes, we meet all of the applicable requirements of for stormwater and compensatory storage and all of that. And I don't see why it wouldn't. We've removed a large amount of eight townhouses and a large amount of pavement without making any changes, any decreases to our commitment. We could have looked at this again and decreased it because of the decrease in impervious, but we didn't, because again, it is integral to the municipal system and working during those storm events. So it's just going to work better and provide more in the way of improvements to that system by leaving all of this volume um, as we had it. And that's this cross-hatched area here is the underground storage chambers. They're modular, and we can change the kind of work with the shape, and that's why it's kind of an irregular shape as it goes through. And further on in the plan set, there are details of that system. It's called Storm Trap. They are precast concrete modules that are interconnected, kind of like Legos, and we just place them down, and they're an underground vault for storage of water. We have, as far as the other utilities, we're looping the water line through to Little's Lane. So that will make some improvements in the water distribution system in Oak, and also feed our building. Sewer is being discharged to Oak Street in the municipal system, and we did investigations with regards to the capacities and the status of that system, and that works. Any sewer manholes that we're installing they'll be gasketed and bolted so that they're protected from inflow during a flood event. One of the things that we provided the ZBA and we did not include in our package, and might be of interest to the commission, while not directly related to the performance standards of the wetlands regulations under bordering land subject to flooding, was what do we do with our residents during flooding events? It was questions that came up by the fire department, questions by the ZBA, questions from the general public. What we did is we came up with a response plan in 3 tiers. The first tier was, and the 3 tiers relate to different levels of flooding. The first level would be minor nuisance flooding, categorized by anything less than 12 inches of standing water in the parking lot, 6 to 12 inches for a short duration period. And there would be a notice from the management. This will be a rental project with a management company. There'll be notifications from the management company to the residents that we anticipate there may be some nuisance flooding in the parking lot. The next level would be anything above 12 inches, but less than 3 feet, where the message would go out to the residents to contemplate temporarily relocating their cars, because the floodwaters could get to the point where there could be some car damage. And these levels were tied to forecasted rainfall amounts, so that there would be an ability by the management company to understand there's a storm coming. They're forecasting 2 inches of rain, or they're forecasting 3 inches of rain. In the event there's a forecast for substantial flooding, the 100-year event, there would be a call out for mandatory relocation of the car. We also work with the fire department with regards to emergency evacuation. Should the fire department have to evac a person, again, all of the residents are above that 100-year floodplain. They could shelter in place, but in the event there was a necessity for the fire department to get somebody out, we had provided them information whereby they could park the ladder truck on Oak Street out of the floodplain. Oak Street continues to rise up, and at some point gets above that 27. They could swing the ladder over to the patio, and we showed them that there was ample distance to there. Again, the patio out front is above the floodplain. And there's a door directly into that residence level, that center corridor hallway that goes down the middle, and they could evac a person via the ladder. So we went through quite a bit of discussion and picking apart all of the scenarios with regards to the flooding event. And again, while this is not technically proving out the performance standards of 310 CMR 1057, it's just good, I think, common nature of that the commissioners and the general public may have these questions, and been there, done that, gotten through that. And I just wanted to share what we had discussed prior during the ZBA process relative to reaction to the flood event. So, Mr. Chairman, I think that's generally our presentation with regards to our project. We are here and happy to answer any questions the commission may have or the public may have, and look to getting the peer review done, hopefully before the next meeting, and trying to move this project forward.
The chair. So you mentioned something about 100 parking spaces. So I don't know where they are on your site plan here.
Certainly, there's underneath there's 23, 19, 17. So that's 40, 59. And then there's a row of 27 along this property line, 8 here and 6 here. So these numbers are the total number of spaces in a row of parking.
So the parking will be underneath where the residents are living.
Yes.
And how many floors for the residential? How many floors?
Michael, did we reduce, I'm just reaching out to Mr. Larkin. We reduced
I think it was kept the same. So I think it was 3 livable areas. I think it was.
So it's 3 stories above the ground level parking. That was Michael Larkin. Yeah.
Thank you, Joe. That was a good presentation. I have a question. Is the building handicap accessible by elevator?
Yes, it is, Mr. Chairman. There's 4 handicap spaces underneath the building, directly abutting the lobby, and there's an elevator in the lobby.
So the elevator goes up to all 4 floors. There's only
Yes.
one elevator?
Yes.
Okay. Second, my experience at that location is the groundwater is usually pretty high. And so my question gets into these underground storage vaults. When you put them in the ground, will they be going into wetlands, real wet ground?
Well, we did do soil testing, Mr. Chairman, to understand where the seasonal high groundwater was. The system out in front, which is an infiltration system, is above the groundwater. There's a kind of a
how
mount.
high or how far down is groundwater?
It's about 3 feet.
Hmm.
So there's a higher ground here, and we're building it up. And it's out. This is the only area on site that's outside the floodplain. So we're taking advantage of that. And where it is a roof drain system, we don't have to worry about the depth of the catch basins. So we can keep that system above the seasonal high water. The other chamber system, the reason we're going with the concrete chambers, the storm trap system, is that system can be made watertight, and it can be put into the groundwater. And we're not looking for that system to recharge. We're just looking for it to hold back the water and detain it, and let it out.
As I understand your explanation, when you put these storm trap systems in the ground. You will be basically pumping water out of the ground to put them in. And this is the groundwater. And then they will be empty until they get filled and eventually drained, correct?
Correct.
Now, when you displace the groundwater, where does it go? I mean, it's got to go somewhere. And also, the next question I had was, who maintains these storage vessels, if you will, cleans them out? Because stuff's going to get in them that you don't want.
Yep, absolutely. We have a full operation and maintenance plan. And again, this is a rental project, so there will be there'll be a management company that's managing it. They will hire the appropriate people to do the annual 4 times a year, whatever's outlined in the operation and maintenance plan. And we would welcome a condition that we provide annual evidence that we're doing that. It's critical in this day and age.
It is critical.
Since the implementation of the stormwater management handbook and the guidelines and now regulations, these systems are complex enough that they need to be monitored, they need to be inspected, and they need to be maintained. One of the things that I recommend to commissions, Mr. Chairman, is to be more proactive with maintenance from the standpoint of making sure that it's getting done. And the way that I recommend commissions do that is not to condition that a report at the end of the year has to be filed, but that a contract is signed with a reputable firm that has the qualifications to do this. And that evidence of that contractual obligation is given to the commission. So, Mr. Larkin enters into a contract for 3 years to do the maintenance. That's a commitment. That's knowing that, okay, we've engaged a company. The commission knows and can check out that that company has the expertise to do that. And it's, they're contractually obligated to do their stuff. And that way, it's not about, I've got to call the people to do my maintenance. It's already there. It's happening. The state of Maine uses this.
I will go one step further in recommendations to have whoever the landlord or the property owner contracts with, the monthly inspections be submitted to the Conservation Commission agent, and an annual report be submitted every October 31st. And anything that was done, maintenance wise should be so noted.
Yep, we would welcome that, Mr. Chairman. Again, as engineers designing these systems, it makes no sense to put them in the ground and forget about them. They need to be inspected and maintained.
Is there a how do I explain this? Since it's not the city's property, the landlord, if you will, can he supply a bond to the city to take care of these issues in the event that the company that's supposed to maintain them fails?
I would have to defer to my client and
I mean,
legal
that's my
question.
recommendation.
The legal question as to whether or not you could do that. I know that it's done when in building roadways, but certainly we'll look into that, Mr. Chairman. We understand your concern, and we'll get back to you.
The concern is that I don't want to overload the storm drain system, because we're putting a large piece of, a large home housing unit in a floodplain. And we were making the appropriate provisions to contain the water, but it requires maintenance. And in my experience in these kinds of projects as the maintenance becomes last in the scheme of things. Everything else is done before that. So I want to make sure that there's a bond or some sort of cash, bank account someplace that the city can draw down on in the event the city has to come in and fix something. And it's
We
not,
will-
it's not
Okay.
unusual. If there's a subdivision being built, there's a bond for that until, a 3-year period or some agreement's been determined that the subdivision works, all the systems. So I'm not making this stuff up. It's done all the time.
No, it is. It is. So we will look into how that can be worked out. We'll talk to Mr. Politz because he'll be the one that has to step
Well,
in
he has
and,
to-
and
Yeah,
do the work, but we'll get back to the commission with how that can be done. The
Okay, and what-
mechanics of that.
yeah, I just want to make sure it's documented and there's something to fall back on. In the area of telling the tenants to move their cars and in the possibility that there's a flood coming, where do you guys propose they move them to? The
We
entire
expect,
downtown is subject to the same problem.
no, we had speculated that in that big event where they might have to move them for a period of time, that they'd move them over to the Nordstrom Mall, which is
Okay.
out of the floodplain.
And you guys will provide is the property accessible in the event that the water, and I don't know how high it has to get before it's not accessible, but are these sidewalks or these walkways elevated high enough that they can walk on, I'll say, a 2-foot high sidewalk to get to their house?
What,
Can they, or do they just leave their pets and their food, for the duration of a storm unattended?
well, again, I believe that they can shelter in place. They'll have
Yeah, but
whatever they need to do that. If they have to evacuate, then
Stuart, the building is above the flood, the 100-year flood. So it'd have to flood above the 100-year flooding for the building to start to, percolate water or whatnot.
I
right.
understand it.
The building is elevated, Stuart.
Yeah, I know.
It's
But the-
6, would you say it's 6 feet off the ground, Mr. Pizzola?
No, it's actually 10 feet off the ground.
10
it's higher
10 feet
than
off
that.
the ground,
Right, you got to drive a car under it.
right, so,
No, my concern is if it's surrounded, if the flood comes, it won't affect the building or the homes, but it will affect the ability to get in them and get out of them in case they're stuck.
he explained that the ladder truck would create like a bridge of per se, from the edge of the street of Oak Street to the lobby of the building,
Hmm,
which is their proposal.
Yeah, the front patio is at elevation 31, which is that upper
Okay.
level. And then the Oak Street, goes up high pretty quick, so it gets out of the floodplain just as you're getting to the south of the property.
Anybody else, comments?
I have a couple of questions.
Go ahead.
Just the idea that, not so much flood related, but just I saw in the beginning from one of your entranceway, seemed like there was, the most direct route, people always just gonna take the straight route, and you have a path, like a switchback kind of path going back and forth, because it's not that steep, I didn't think it was. Is it for handicap accessibility, Mr. Joe, or is it,
Yes, so there's, these two sidewalks are sidewalks. They're less than, handicap accessibility for a sidewalk is 5%. So
Right.
these are under 5%. And then this last section is an actual ADA ramp with rails, which has to be no more than 8% to get up there. So
And you also-
we've got a,
a
yeah,
straight
so that's
path
why
or-
it kind of, that's
Yeah.
one that, and then we do have a straight path that uses stairs. for
Okay,
those
okay.
that don't need that.
And just to you mentioned how there's gonna be test holes, and not so much test holes, but peak holes, or how, I forget how you refer to them. Is it those within the underground chambers, it's gonna be sufficient amount that you can see the status of any kind of debris that gets into the stormwater chambers?
Yes, there'll be monitoring wells at the entry
Monitoring
points
Points, right.
where your sediment will kind of be highest. And when I talk about maintenance in a qualified expert firm that can do this, these kind of more complex systems, they all have camera systems
Right,
that will,
okay,
that you can put down the inspection ports and inspect,
Sure.
that way. Direct feed to a tablet, and they're great to be able to really see that and understand, okay, our sediment load is such that we've got to get a vac truck in here, and then the vac truck can go down that same port and suck out the sediment.
Just lastly, not to contradict you, but I thought you said in the beginning of the explanation or presentation that you explained about open space at the rear of the property, but then you went on to say that that area is going to be used as a retention basin. And
No,
so
it's additional flood mitigation.
So it's not
what,
necessarily open
yeah, what-
space.
well, we're talking about, when we talk about the different levels of flooding, nuisance flooding, a little bit higher flooding, and then this 6-foot flood, the 100-year storm. I think what the city was looking for is during that big event, and we get some extra storage there. So that's what that would be for, and that's how it would be utilized. So how often does that happen? Once a year. It's supposed to be once every 100 years, but you all know it's happening more often, and why we don't know. Climate change, whatever we want to say, but by and large, day to day, week to week, month to month, that area is going to be available for passive recreation, throwing a frisbee, throwing a baseball, whatever it be.
So you're saying it's not very deep then? It's what's the
Only a couple feet.
okay.
I think, Joe, you said that if you look, is there a grading plan shows slight change in grade there, I think, right?
Yeah.
So it's very little, and it's a large flat surface in the middle, right?
Yeah.
Right
So the
now,
top-
is that open space pavement, and then it's going to go to ground, like grass, I guess? Or is
Yeah,
it
it'll-
already grassy?
No, it's paved.
I see.
I can
Okay,
pull up.
so you're adding more, you're taking away that paved area and
Yep.
adding more, okay.
So it's this area back here that's just all paved right to the back of the property, right to Little's Lane. So we'll be taking all of this area here, all of this pavement up.
And that, I can't really see it, but above the dog walk area, what does that say? Something taught,
Tot lot,
oh, it's like a playground?
playground, yeah.
I see, okay, thank you.
I guess just to emphasize Stuart's point is maintenance, that's all that part in the rear, obviously stormwater needs to be maintained just as much as the underground chambers due to vegetation growing and over vegetation of such, you always see overgrown detention basins.
Yeah, and again, it's wants to feel like passive open space. So it'll be lawn, it'll be mowed, it'll be available for that passive recreation. It's just in these huge events, it could provide some additional relief to the city drainage system.
Through the chair, I have several questions. just for housekeeping purposes, I just wanted to, because you guys, this project's been before us many different times over the years, and I didn't know if you already have all your approvals for the mass housing approvals and your comprehensive permit. Are those in hand? Are those, I remember back in March of 2017 that they were going to approve their expires and they would expire in 2 years. Do you know if those are up to date?
No, again, we have a decision by the zoning board that just happened last year. And that's been appealed to Housing Appeals Committee. And right now that process is stayed so that the city and the applicant can mediate a resolution. And we feel confident that that's going to come, but part of that mediation, there was a request by the city for us to file this application with you.
Okay, so
what we believe is going to happen is, and I'm not sure we can get back to the commission about timing. What happens first? Does the mediation team from the city want the commission to act and make sure that all of your review comments are taken care of, and the peer review is done, and that you're happy with that we're meeting the performance standards and so forth, and then render a decision? Or do they just want to know that we're in process, and then they're going to advance the mediation and get a decision rendered that's hopefully mediation means a decision that comes forth that both parties are happy.
Okay. So some of my questions may be not conservation related, but just I need to touch upon, because since the zoning portion is under appeal, assuming that everything's going to go through, but I have some questions about how dense the site is. I look at the parking and getting around there. It's a 4-story building, and I'm wondering how a ladder truck, an emergency vehicle, fire ladder truck, will be able to go around that whole building to the backside. It looks very tight. And I don't know if that's been weighed in on, but it doesn't look like a ladder truck could get through the site and come around and rescue somebody from a 4-story building from the back, but it's just a question. And since that's part of zoning, I asked the question because if it isn't, then the site plan would have to change. So I feel I have the ability, I can ask these questions. So I have some concerns about that. And, this site, this project.
Oh, Mr. Rizzo, did we lose Joe Piznola? Did we lose him?
Yes.
Yeah, we lost him.
He would, if he can come back, but he would answer yes. That was Vice Chair. That was taken into consideration, that there was plans with the fire trucks, and that was with the city engineer Will Paulitz did a whole analysis with that and reviewed that as well as part of the whole ZBA process. So that was done there.
Okay. All right. You've been before us many times, different levels of design and trying to use up as much space as possible in the property, knowing that this is a tough site. The downtown area, the flooding, there's such a history there. It seems like quite a bit of discussion was about picking the building up and designing for the 100-year storm, and talk about rescuing people who live here and having the fire department come down with ladder trucks to rescue them on a 100-year flood. Doesn't look like the place you would want, but we should be putting housing. It should be something different, but that's not my choice, but it's just my opinion. That doesn't seem to be a conducive place to raise a family and have children roaming around when you've got 100-year storms that we seem to be getting every 3 years now. So that's, I was hoping for a much smaller project. I know it was much larger at one time, but originally this project was 26 units and went to 80 units, and now we're down to 54 units. It seems like a gross overbuild to a property and a site that is so sensitive to the flooding in Peabody. It just doesn't seem right. I just have a little statement that, the magnitude of this project does not promote or support the financial investment and the commitment that the city of Peabody, together with the federal funding and grant programs that the city worked so hard to acquire in order to mitigate serious flooding problems that taxpayers and businesses and homeowners have lived with for so long. It doesn't seem like a project that really should be here. And we talk about causes of flooding. The site in itself, finally we got some test pits that were done back in March of last year. And one of the things that the test pits revealed was where groundwater was, but also what the soil conditions and underlying soils were in those test pits. And there was evidence in the test pits that there was organics, and the site is a filled site. From the history and testimony and people who live in the area, this place, people used to ice skate here. And somewhere along the way, the site got filled. And the filling of that site has contributed to all of the flooding that people have in this area. And I'm not sure when the filling took place. I reached out to DEP and asked them to tell me when the Wetlands Protection Act went into effect and when the city of Peabody adopted that, and whether or not this filling took place after that date. It opens up a question of whether the site should be put back the way it was before. There's definitely organics. There's 5 feet of fill in the site, and certainly this site itself has contributed to some of the flooding problems in the area. So with that, I have some questions. With regard to some of the site features, there was a drain pipe that just showed to either to connect to or discharge to or from the Peabody Historic Society. The plan still shows it, but my understanding, I'm looking for the report, that you are planning on removing that 12-inch reinforced concrete pipe, according to the report or the plans that I'm looking at here. So that's been asked, that's been something that's lingering for many years. And so apparently, I guess it's there, but your proposal is to remove that 12-inch reinforced concrete pipe. And I ask that because there is an isolated wetland there, and I don't know what the function of that pipe is or was, whether it was a discharge pipe or discharging drainage to that wetland, or taking water from the wetland and bringing it out to another location. And my question on that regarding taking the pipe out is whether or not that wetland is dependent on getting water from that pipe. And by removing it, would you be effectively reducing the ability or the effects of that wetland and habitat and so forth that might live in the wetland? So I know the plan shows it's being crossed out to be removed, but in your report, in your stormwater report, it indicates that the existing and proposed effects of that pipe are still in effect. So I don't know if that's a mistake. Maybe you could take a look at that.
We can't, we have no evidence that the pipe exists. There's no evidence down in the isolated vegetated wetlands that there's a pipe. There's no evidence that there's any flow either way. The pipe is on there from a record survey. If I in looking at its configuration and connection into the municipal drain system, I'm surmising that it was an overflow when it did exist, or maybe it exists and it's just totally clogged and covered over and not functioning at the time.
Well, your drainage plan shows it coming out, so it doesn't exist.
Well, we
showed it?
we show it as from record.
Okay.
And where there's no evidence that it's functioning, and Ms. Morse, who did our wetland scientist did, walk around that entire isolated vegetated wetlands, and she could speak to what she saw and what she found, but there's no evidence that there's hydraulic function going on, again, in either direction. So that isolated wetlands exists because it's got contributing area to it that feeds it. It could be that it's below the water table. It is an isolated vegetated wetlands.
Hey, Joe, we're losing you for a second, Joe.
Yeah, Joe, we can't hear you.
Poor condition, but in its existence isn't, so again, no evidence.
And I can speak on that while his phone is buffering. Yeah,
Okay.
So Devin Morse, for the record, Hancock Associates wetland scientist. I did explore that wetland as Joe just explained, and I did not see any evidence of that pipe. And the isolated vegetated wetland is very degraded. Its population and dominance were invasive species, multiflora rose, Japanese barberry. I did a glossy buckthorn. I'm trying to recall my report that I provided in there, but yeah, and if the commission needs any photographic evidence of that, I can provide that.
Okay.
Where all those
The
TVs going?
FEMA floodplain elevation is 27, and the lowest part of the property is around elevation 20. So I was looking at your detention pond. So and also from the test pits. So from the test pits, it appears that the estimated seasonal high groundwater elevation is around 19.8. And the existing and the proposed detention area is elevation 20. So the bottom of that detention area is right at what I believe is the groundwater level. And in your report, and then so when I think about so when I think about the storm trap chambers, that the elevation of the chambers and the system, I was looking at elevations, it's 2 feet, 2 feet below the groundwater. Elevation 17 something, so it's 2 feet below groundwater. And in the report, under your soils report, it talks about the types of soils, the soil strata in the area, and there's D soils that are in the report. And according to Massachusetts Stormwater, it says when designing infiltration BMPs, adequate subsurface information needs to be obtained. Infiltration systems must be installed in soil capacity capable of absorbing the recharge volume, but not in D soils. And that these recharge areas should be, the bottom of these recharge areas should be 2 feet above the seasonal estimated high groundwater. Well, you're right at it or in it. And I don't know how that, maybe you could explain to me how that works. But so I had some, it just doesn't seem that it's gonna work.
Well, you want me to respond to that one?
Yeah, go ahead.
Right
Thank
now.
you.
Okay. All right. This is a redevelopment project. Redevelopment projects under Mass DEP stormwater regulations is defined as any project that doesn't increase the impervious area. Within a redevelopment project, we are allowed to take certain liberties. We are supposed to comply to the extent practicable. As I said before, with regards to recharge, attenuation, and treatment, we're fully compliant. The only portion of our system that is not compliant is the requirement for our infiltration, our recharge system to be 2 feet above seasonal high water. We've done the best we can at providing that recharge that only takes roof drainage. So from a quality standpoint, it is clean. DEP considers roof drainage clean, doesn't need any treatment to it. So to the degree that 2 foot separation the intent of the 2 foot separation has to do with providing some additional treatment of water before it gets to the water table. We feel that is not an issue here because it's only taking roof. From the standpoint of functionality, it's the functionality of a recharge system can be impaired by proximity to water table, but we feel that providing recharge is important, and that we're doing the best that we can. We're providing the recharge volume. It is above the water table. We believe it will function. It will serve to offset some of the issues in the area. An alternative to this, and one that we can take under the redevelopment standards, is to not provide any recharge at all. Where we are a redevelopment plan project in a floodplain, that we're limited to be able to elevate the ground because of compensatory storage requirements, flood volume requirements. We have this quandary between doing the best we can to fully meet all of the requirements and doing what is practicable given the constraints of a redevelopment project. That's why DEP put those provisions, those liberties within the regulations when dealing with redevelopment projects. We know that by and large, our system is far and above better than the existing condition. We're decreasing the amount of pavement. We're replacing pavement with roof. We are treating stormwater. We are providing this recharge. We are improving the municipal system and its ability to react to flood events. So we could have asked for more leniency and more taken more liberties with regards to our ability under the redevelopment standards, but we didn't do that.
But you know what the city's going through in this area with flooding.
No, I do, and we've worked very diligently with Mr. Politz and his peer review engineers to come up with this system.
Yeah,
I mean,
how much does
they
that
put it.
improve?
I'm sorry.
How much does that improve over what's there now? So it seems to me if you had a smaller building, you could have more recharge area and help, this location and other places by having more storage.
Yeah, just from the standpoint of the fact that we are reducing the impervious, logic would have that we don't need this volume. We don't need the recharge because the recharge is now happening on the permeable areas of the site. So by and large, the volume that we're putting underground in the concrete chamber system is to again, take some of that localized flooding and put it underground, so that we're not taking away that natural detention capacity of the site to do that. And then we're ratcheting back the outfall of that system, which is defining how much volume we need underground. So I don't necessarily agree that making the building smaller is going to expand the amount of recharge, because we're still going to be up against that proximity to the groundwater, and our inability to raise the site is still going to be there because of the existence of the flood.
Okay. On some of the flooding questions, how will the stormwater flow through the garage unimpeded during a flood?
The garage is slightly pitched back towards there's a knife edge at the drip edge of the building. So that water that falls from the sky stays outside the building, and we don't get rainwater that goes into the garage drains that are in the building, under the building, which is a requirement of the building code. When the water and the differential is a matter of inches with regards to from that knife edge down to the low point and then back up to the high point at the center of the building. You've got the low point kind of a third of the way or a quarter of the way in from the drip edge, and that's where the drains will go. So in a flooding event, you will retain that few inches of water in those low pockets, and then that will drain through the garage drains. There's a gas trap, oil and gas trap on those garage drains that is required, and then that is connected to the drain system. Normally you would connect a garage drain to the sewer system, but Mr. Pollitt's asked that the city doesn't want flood water in the sewer system, have to pay for treating clean flood water. So we've redirected that to the drain system. So in normal times, what's going to go into that system? It's going to be snow melt from the cars, drip from the cars when they come in wet, or wind rain that gets in there, a very small amount of water that will pass through that system. It's only during these flood events that get up to the level of 22 where it starts to come into the building and higher. When the water recedes, that small amount of volume that's trapped in the garage drains will be all that goes into that system. The rest will recede with the rest of the site receding.
If I read it correctly, your operation and maintenance plan is pretty extensive. I'm wondering how it's going to be implemented and maintained. Because correct me if I'm wrong, you mentioned about having periodic people who live there will have their cars inspected to make sure they're not leaking and dripping oil and those kind of things. Is that correct? That's in the plan? That
Yes.
Someone's going to be responsible for doing that inventory and checking?
Yes.
Okay. And another question, can you just touch base on, where is it? Your blue roof?
Yep. So the blue roof idea is there's an inherent disparity between what civil engineers do in designing stormwater systems and what plumbing engineers do in complying with plumbing code in the design of a roof drain collection system, and what architects and structural engineers do with the coping on the sides of the building. essentially what the plumbing code says is roof drains need to be designed based on the amount of roof area that's contributing to an individual roof drain. It defines how many roof drains are needed. If you back calculate that, it turns out to be the 10-year storm. So there's an inherent detention happening on the tops of every roof. That when it rains more than the 10-year storm, those roof drain systems back up. And it collects water on top of the roof. The drains are working, they're just not working fast enough. So the blue roof idea just takes advantage of that. So in the larger storm events, we calculate what that outflow level is, that outflow rate is. We put it into our model. And in this case, it detains some water on the roof before it goes into the infiltration system, further ratcheting back the total rate leaving the site at any given moment in the storm, especially at the peak.
So how would that, how does that function in the wintertime, like in the Northeast? If there's a foot of snow on the roof and then it freezes and then you get a lot of ice up there and then you get those January rainstorms when you get, which happens quite a bit. How does the system work at that point? Does it fail or does it just go over the top?
There will be scuppers that the relief scuppers on the building that will come into play. But that question is what happens to any flat roof anywhere in those similar situations. It's what we're doing is we're not doing anything different than what's done on any flat roof designed in accordance with the plumbing code. We're just taking advantage of it and modeling it and saying, okay, this is another piece to the puzzle, where today there's a parking lot, tomorrow there's going to be a flat roof with this roof drain system that happens to help. So we want to count it.
Okay. I can't remember now if in your operation maintenance plan, did you talk about snow storage? It doesn't seem to be a spot anywhere on the property that snow should be stored. So I'm assuming that in the wintertime, your snow will be removed from the site?
If we have to, I think that large passive area in the back can be there. What we haven't done and we will do before the next meeting is to better jive our snow management plan with the current plan. And I will admit, snow management was challenging when we had the 8 townhouses back there and the additional pavement. It's not a challenge now. We have all of that area back there to utilize for snow storage.
That detention area should not have any snow storage in it.
It's not a detention area. And it's important to qualify that it's not. It's a relief area that in the larger storms can activate and provide some additional volume. It is not even modeled in our calculations, so we're not taking advantage of that volume. It's not necessary to come to the conclusions that we've come to. And furthermore, our system design hasn't changed since we took out all that pavement. So not only do we not have the pavement from that area, but we've got this extra area. It was born of a request by the city mediation team to provide some additional, what they originally wanted was us to provide more underground storage, more of the storm trap chambers, just make it bigger. And we said, well, you also asked us to remove the townhouses and all of this pavement area and increase the open space. Why don't we just lower it by a couple feet, and that'll be another stopgap measure in those larger storms. So it's not a detention area. It's not critical to that. I would equate it to a Army Corps flood mitigation area that engages during these larger storm events. So I think it,
So that you'll make that, you're gonna make it known then to the town, the city, that potentially would be used to store snow.
yes,
Okay.
we can
And
cer-
that-
certainly,
And that catch basin, does that connect, that's connected to the system? All your drainage leaves the site. Is that correct? That all your
Yes.
storm drainage is taken out and goes out to Oak Street?
Yep.
Okay, so, and does that drain line connected to that, if I can use the word MDC trap, MDC manhole?
the drain line in this flood area.
You said
open
the
space?
building was connected to a trap.
Yeah,
Is-
the garage drain goes through just as it's leaving the building, it goes through a MDC trap.
But if you are storing snow here and, oil and other, whatever it might be picked up in the snow and everything and goes in there, that water that gets into that system, should that be connected to that same structure? Or could it be?
I wouldn't put it to the MDC trap, but we've got another treatment device on site that we could send it through. Yeah,
Mhm.
so we could look at that, definitely.
Okay. All right, that's kind of, I'm looking forward to the peer review. Hopefully they'll maybe see some of the questions that I asked, and maybe they've got, good answers to those. I still have that question about the site in itself, whether the site itself is in violation of filling in wetland after chapter 131. Right.
1972, right, Vice Chairman?
Is that what it is?
I think that's when the act was enacted. I'm not too sure. I haven't been privy to.
Yeah, I was trying
Peabody's
to find it.
ordinance.
I was trying to find it, and I having trouble. So I reached out to DEP and left a message, and hopefully they'll get back to me. And what the effects of that is, because there's definitely organics, in those test pits, and you can tell that it's a fill site. So the question is whether this, I can use the word, if the site is legal. And so maybe we'll get some feedback on that. I think those are kind of my questions for now. I just think that, personally, I just don't think it's a residential project for this area, but it's just my opinion. So that's my questions for now. I'll defer it to other commissioners and wait to hear what the results are from the peer review.
Anybody else in the commission have a comment?
I just have one question. Is there gonna be like fencing or something where the wetlands meet down that border there where the wetlands are?
We hadn't proposed any, but certainly if the commission thinks it's a good idea, we could certainly do that.
Oh, I do have another couple questions, sorry. You got a proposed retaining wall on the southeasterly side of the property. And it doesn't say it's to be determined. If you have any ideas what kind of wall that's gonna be?
Most likely it'll be a gravity block wall.
One of those pre-engineered ones which it doesn't have a deep footing?
Yes,
Okay.
that's what we're finding to be the best approach of
Okay.
late, both from a ease of installation, minimizing impact, and even from a cost standpoint.
Okay, and the question about, do you have any plan, how would you plan on taking care of dewatering during construction? I know that you're putting that new water line in. So that water line will be 5 feet below ground, so you got an 8-foot trench, which puts you about 4 feet in groundwater. How do you plan on dewatering and being able to put the water line in, and where's it going?
Well, we typically leave dewatering to the contractor, and today you actually need a permit through the NPDES system to discharge to a municipal system. So there's a whole process there whereby they need to, the contractor would need to engage someone to do that permitting through the EPA. If the alternative to that would be to dewater into someplace that didn't leave the site. So the reason we don't get into it is because we need that critical information from the contractor with regards to means and methods and how they plan to do the trenching. They know that they've got to keep it clean, can't put it dirty into the city system. They can't throw it out into the wetlands. Certainly what I've recommended to commissions in the past, based on our experience, is to highly condition dewatering, so that when the contractor comes up with a plan, that they get it to the conservation agent, so the agent understands that, okay, there's a plan in place that takes care of the dewatering in the correct method. And again, if they discharge to the municipal system, then they need to get that EPA permit. Certainly we can speculate, we can come up with ideas, but without, we're so far away from having a contractor that we can't get that input.
That's a lot of water. I don't know how you do that without either putting in sheet piling and pumping it dry or something, but.
Well, we've had, in challenging sites, you have to engage experts, and we've had sites that have had to bring in frac tanks and do some serious measures to ensure that the water is clean wherever it's discharged, unless it's on site. It may be that, and I'm just thinking off the top of my head, that we excavate this area in the back, we take up the pavement, excavate this area in the back, and use it as a settling basin temporarily for the dewatering process. Don't put that connection in yet to the municipal system, so that there's no chance that it will go there. And then that could be a settling point. So certainly happy to look into that and see if that's something that might work. Talk to some contractors, off the cuff, and say, I think this would work. And then certainly propose it, maybe have it part of that condition that I'm suggesting the commission put in.
Okay, let's not forget that.
Yep.
Okay, I think that's all the questions I have right now.
Anybody else?
Chair, I have some questions that I can just talk to them offline about, but one, Mike just kind of spurred it. Now, typically we would have a dewatering plan and a snow storage plan before we even close the hearing. You gave some good reasons as to why you don't have one. Have you had any conversations with Will Politz or anyone in the city about dewatering into our system, or is this just your pipe dream? Because you said frac tank, that would kind of ideally, or building something on the site. So has anyone in the city said that this is a good route to dewater, or have you not even had that conversation yet?
We have not had the conversation. It didn't come up through all of our discussions with Mr. Politz earlier. It wasn't an option in earlier plans because that area was proposed to be paved with townhouses. So certainly this idea, I think it has merit. I think I can run with it, and I'd be happy to vet it and talk to some contractors. And then if it sounds like it's a good plan, I would absolutely like to avoid dewatering into the municipal system. It's the only time you you do that is when there's no other option. And again,
You don't have permission from the city yet, correct? You haven't even asked anyone.
no. So I can have those conversations with Will, but I think better idea is to chase down this idea of building that back area. And
Yeah, I
use
don't think
as
it's
a settling post.
just from previous experiences. I do not, especially a project of this magnitude, I do not think it's a good idea to wait until they hire a contractor and then put it on me to approve their dewatering. Absolutely not. I think that's something that you guys need to figure out before this is closed here. And we definitely would need a snow storage plan, I would imagine, because I know back years ago when you guys were before the commission, not you specifically, but Mr. Larkin, that was one of our big needs is where is this snow going? Because you can't just stockpile it on, I think the last plan was putting it on Oak Street and then no one would be able to get out safely. But in the case of time, it's already like 8:38. We've already been talking about this for about an hour and a half. And I know there's people in the audience who want to speak, and we still have some really large projects after this. We're not going to be voting on it tonight. It's got to go to peer review. So I would suggest opening it to members of the public. And if anyone would like to speak, they do need to raise their hand, state their name and address or affiliation, et cetera, before they speak. Is the commission opening it to members of the public?
Stu?
I guess we need a motion to open the public hearing to the public.
No, you don't need to make a
No.
motion. You just open it and they speak.
Okay, it's open, speak.
All right, I am going to promote
But
someone
I
who
don't
has
see
had their,
anybody except Jackie is on there and that's it,
no,
right?
I'm going to promote Samuel Vitale. He has had his hand up for,
Oh.
I'm promoting you to panelist. So your screen is going to go black. It's going to ask you, it's going to tell you I'm promoting you to panelist and you can promote yourself. Unmute, start your video.
So there you go there.
Am I on?
Yes.
Samuel
My name is
Vitale.
Samuel Vitale. I'm an attorney in Lynn. With me tonight is Wayne Losey, who's a consultant for us. Richard DeFilippo, who is here, is in the butter. And Mr. Losey would like to address you with some concerns that we have with respect to the impact, not only on Mr. DeFilippo's property, but on the other properties in close proximity in the neighborhood. Wayne.
Hi, Wayne Losey. I'm representing clients. Next to me here is Richard DeFilippo, who is a direct abutter to the site. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, commissioners, Lucia. I know you have a very busy agenda. I'm not going to belabor this. A lot of good questions by the commissioners. I'd just like to the redevelopment standards on the stormwater. Mr. Pesnola mentioned that he's taken a lot of liberties. I think that, to say the least, that it is taking a lot of liberty. The elevations of each storm event would impact, along with the groundwater, the effectiveness of any stormwater treatment on that site, particularly any kind of groundwater in the ground type systems like a storm scepter or similar to what they're proposing here. That's a big concern. The maintenance on it will be a nightmare with the amount of sediments that will build up within it. It's just, I won't belabor that. That's something the peer review can look at, but I would point out that we'd like to know what the elevations of each storm event that it would impact. I think elevation 22 was the 10-year, but I'm not sure. I still, and I have questions on that as well with the IVW, the 10-year storm event elevation is under the regs, under 1057, there's a greater threshold for wildlife habitat. Neighbors are concerned that there may be a vernal pool there. There's much to be looked at, and the boundaries need to be specific as to where this 10-year floodplain. I know it doesn't go into the pavement. It wouldn't be part of that. However, there is a concern about that. Real quick, that open space, they're not labeling as a detention area, but it's open space. That should be a condition if it were to ever be approved in perpetuity, that it would not be developed or pavement placed on it ever in perpetuity. Dewatering into a municipal sewer line is illegal. The DEP would not permit it, wouldn't even entertain that. So that dewatering into a municipal sanitary is not an option. It shouldn't even be mentioned. If they're talking about some kind of a stormwater outlet, that might be permitted with a permit. I know that the area that is labeled the Peabody Historical Society, that 12-inch pipe that Hancock couldn't find an outlet or an inlet, that doesn't mean there isn't one. I would love to have an opportunity to look to find that, as well as look at some issues pertaining to what the neighbors claim there are spring peeping going on. There's definite vernal pool activity, but that wouldn't have as much of an impact on the project. Now, the main impacts on this project, we're looking at bordering land subject to flooding. The reason for the performance standards of compensation, every theoretical volume must be compensated foot by foot at each elevation that will be impacted. Mr. Pesnola, in his notice of intent, he mentions he's not going to be compensating between elevations 21.37 and 21.60. Under the regulations, there are no liberties with that. It's very clear that you need to compensate foot by foot each elevation. And I'm not clearly seeing that in this NOI. So I have a lot of questions about that and concerns, and I hope that it's raised with the peer review. And I just want to commend the commissioners for asking a lot of good questions about the stormwater. That early on, Mr. Pesnola said that groundwater was at 3 feet below. You know, and that's seasonal. It's going to vary from time to time. So I think your concerns are very valid. That's why we need to know the elevations of each storm event, where they're going to be. That's going to tell you, give you a good idea with saturation where the groundwater is going to be. And most of this stormwater is not going to function in anything. My guess is anything in a 2-year storm event to above. And so that's something that really needs to be looked at. And I think Commissioner Rizzo, you hit it right on the head. This whole area that they're coming up with some open space, but this is a floodplain, and this isn't just like a foot or two over the floodplain. You're looking at 6 feet. You're talking about that aren't even wetland related issues of evacuation and what the fire department will be burdened with for 64 units, according to the letter in the NOI. That's a lot of effort for this project. Should be downsized, and I just can't wait to see more of the compensation numbers, and that they do meet the performance standards under 10.57. So I have a lot of other concerns, but I know that you're busy, heavy agenda, and we're here and we're going to be anxious to see that peer review. And thank you for your time. Thank you,
Thank
Lucia.
you.
Thank you for your comments. I think they were very good ones. Anybody else in the public?
Yep, there is a Jackie Santiago I am going to promote.
Okay.
And then Jackie, once you're promoted, as I said, your screen's gonna go black and then you can unmute and turn your video.
Hi.
Hi.
So I'm Jackie Santiago, and I am at 42 Oak Street, so directly next to 40 Oak Street. So I am what they were saying when the 40 Oak Street kind of comes up. I am the house that comes up on the flood zone, and I am still on a flood zone. I still pay flood insurance every year. So my concern is when they're letting all this water go, where is it going to go? Like, I've been here since 2005, and though I pay a flood insurance, I have never flooded. My backyard floods, but the inside of the house is never flooded. So when they do all of this and set all this water free, where is it going to go? Into my basement?
That was one of the questions I asked, is when you start excavating and building, where does the water go? Because it's there anyway.
Yeah, I don't think there was actually an answer to that I got. But so that if there's fire trucks coming in, I use that driveway to get into my back parking spot, which I see they've turned into a one-way. So how does that work with my property?
I don't know.
Yeah, just
Those good questions, and I think they should be addressed by the peer review as well, because I know they're changing Oak Street to make this happen. So it's going to affect everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else, Lucia?
I do not see any hands, but if you're in the audience and you'd like to speak, please raise your hand. Nope, no one is raising their hand.
Okay, can we close this part of the hearing?
No, you do not close. No, continue.
All right, no, it's fine, but we can continue it. My issue is that, or my question is, when the peer review gets done, do we come back together to review the peer review and answer all these questions?
That's what I would assume. I don't think this is going to be closing. I don't foresee this closing in May. I know that's what the applicant's hopeful for, unless the peer review can get us the paperwork 2 weeks before our meeting, which would be April 27th. And I don't see that happening, but maybe they will, because I know that the attorney and Gary Bogue are going to definitely want to review that. And you can't just give someone it 2 days before a meeting and expect them to review it thoroughly. And we're all going to get rushed reviewing it as well.
And I think they should also, the peer review folks should be aware of the questions we're raising tonight so that they can hopefully look at that when they're doing their review. Not that they would miss something, but just so they know what we've talked about.
Yep. I wrote down dewatering plan, snow storage plan, and then Mike, you made a lot of comments. I mean, you have a lot of things here about maybe if you put it all in writing and send it to me, what you want them to look at, because otherwise I'm going to have to butcher everything you said. And I mean, I still haven't even done the February minutes yet, but if you want me to go back and look through all this, I can. It's just, I think that if you already have it all written out, it seemed like you read it out. If you could just send it to me.
I don't have it written, but I just have bullets, but I I can talk to you about it. I could call you and,
I'll need those like really soon though, because if they're gonna start the review, I mean, if you could somehow get them to me tomorrow before like noon.
well, I'm hoping that DEP returns my call. I left a message with with them and left them my number to call me. So maybe they'll shed some light on some of the questions I had about the existing site in general relative to.
Oh, you're talking about statute of limitation about getting the fill out of there. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
I believe I have talked to the city solicitor many moons ago, and he said that there was no statute of limitation as far as fill, but that would probably be a question to ask our new city solicitor. I do see that Samuel Vitale has his hand up, so I don't know if you want to let him speak again.
Sure.
The solicitor
Any
will answer.
question?
Hi,
The solicitor's answering
okay, I thought the solicitor was going to answer that question, but I just, my concern is that when the peer review is completed, will we have an opportunity at a public forum to ask questions and make
comment.
further comments on it?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, and just for a little insight on the fill in place that Commissioner Rizzo is looking at, and I'm a former DEP employee, I know about it, but I can't speak for them now, I'm retired from Mass DEP, but it usually pertained to an owner that owns the property at the time of the filling. So if it's discovered 10, 20 years later that that fill is in place, it's a violation. But when it passes hands, I hate to be the bearer of bad news on that one. I don't think DEP or anybody can go after the current owners, but check it out and hopefully DEP will get back to you on it.
Thank you. I kind of thought that or they have to go after the property owner who owned it before, but that's usually for contamination, not necessarily.
Correct. Fill, not clean fill.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
we're still waiting for the peer review. We're waiting for a snow removal plan, and we're waiting for a dewatering plan to show up before we can discuss this further, correct?
And Will Pollitt's, any additional comments, right?
Yes. So, I mean, the concern is the same on everybody's part. This is a floodplain. It does flood, and we don't want to put a building in there that's going to exacerbate the flooding and create problems for the neighborhood or the city. It's, pretty black and white to me. Anybody else have any comments at all, or can we?
I make a motion.
I'll make a motion. We continue this to our next meeting.
Do I hear a second?
I second it.
Roll call, please.
That motion was made to continue this to May 11th, made by Vice Chairman Rizzo, seconded by Secretary Vivaldi. Roll call, Chairman Lazares,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Rizzo,
Yes.
Secretary Vivaldi,
Yes.
Commissioner Athos,
Yes.
Commissioner Comack,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Kibikio.
Yes.
All right, so it is continued to May 11th, 7-0. And I can share the peer review, correct? Like that's a public document at that point, wouldn't it be?
Yeah.
Okay.
Certainly it should be presented at the next meeting, the outcome of the peer review. So naturally, anybody who's in attendance would have the ability to ask a question about it.
Now, I would suggest the peer review be published also, so people can literally read it and see what was said and decided.
Well, once public service is okay with it.
Yeah.
And public service needs to make sure everything's included in that, they've reviewed it, they're good with it before they present it to the commission, or ask the commission to weigh in on it also. But Certainly
But
for the public sees.
I think the public should see it as well, once it gets through the process and gets to us. It's my opinion.
All right, as soon as I have it in my hands, I will definitely let Gary and Mr. Vitale and Mr. Felipe, I'm sorry if I pronounced your names wrong. I will definitely get in touch with anyone as soon as I get it.
All right, can we move on?
Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thank you.
I'm getting lost in the place. All right, item 5. Item 5 is, well, it was requested to be continued to May 11. Do we have
5
to-
and 6 are both actually being continued until May 11th, so maybe you could do them both, number 5 and 6, 10 and 12 Monroe, just for the sake of time.
Did I just read them or just ask for a vote?
Well, I
Ask
mean,
for
you can
motion.
read you can read number 5 and just insert
All right. I'll
10
read
and
it.
12 Monroe.
Continue public hearing on a notice of intent submitted by Sean O'Neill, applicant, owner of record of OCH Walnut Place LLC. The proposed work is the construction of a duplex condominium within a bordering wetland subject to flooding. Oh, there are 2 properties, number 10 and number 12. Number 10 and number 12 in a row. And pardon me, at the last meeting, Commissioner Rizzo, Vice Chairman Rizzo pointed out that they're both dependent on each other. So with that, the proponent is looking for a continuation on these hearings. We need a motion to approve.
Make a motion to continue 10 and 12 Monroe Street until next meeting.
Second. Second.
All right, I have a motion on the floor to continue item number 5 and 6, 10 Monroe Street and 12 Monroe Street. That motion was made for both by Mr. Athis, seconded by Mr. Comack. Roll call, Chairman Lazaris,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Rizzo,
Yes.
Secretary Vivaldi,
Yes.
Commissioner Athis,
Yes.
Commissioner Comack,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Cavicchio.
Yes.
All right, so those are both continued until May 11th, 7-0.
Yes. Item 7. Public hearing on a notice of intent submitted by attorney Jack Kelty for Michael Bonfiglio. Proposed work is a redevelopment of a former leather factory site. Property is known as 49 Tremont Street, map 76, lot 402. Did we receive a request for continuance on this?
No.
No, you didn't receive, I'll tell you what you didn't receive. You didn't receive a memo from Robert Langley, the reviewing engineer, because he said he doesn't have anything to review because the file, they didn't submit a narrative explaining the stormwater. They didn't submit any of the stormwater. So, and Chris Mello and Clayton Moran, neither of them showed up on the site visit. So you do not have a memo from, you do have a memo from DPS basically saying that the applicant will need to satisfy comments. Let's see, yeah, no stormwater and drainage calculations were submitted for this parcel. These will be required for an engineer's review of this project. That's just one of his comments. So basically, he does not want you guys to did you guys see the memo from Bob Langley? It should be
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah, and then the second one is the engineer of record was not available at the site walkthrough. He should contact the reviewer and show needed drawings and calculations. The applicant will need to satisfy any engineering comments made from previous reviews for this entire site as applicable to this parcel. And the first one that I didn't read, a single grading plan was submitted for the engineering review. I mean, basically, he's looking, he needs to know, like, where's the stormwater going? If it was already permitted, he needs someone to explain that to him.
Right. But that hasn't been done.
May I speak?
Jack Kelty?
Yes.
Yes. Go ahead.
Yes, I did get a copy of the memo this afternoon when I happened by Mr. Langley's office. I understand his concern. If you recall, this was a filing initially that I made on behalf of Mr. Bonfiglio, wherein I tried to say that the Wetlands Protection Act would not apply to these premises if we built in accordance with the then expired order. Board was uncomfortable with that, suggested that that was inappropriate, and as a result, we filed an NOI. In our notice of intent, we filed a portion of the original plan that was completely approved, and in which we are currently working towards on the building that is built. We're working towards compliance with the outstanding order of conditions, which is now expired. I completed a notice of intent filing, sent out the notice to our abutters, and I think the important things to note here are that we are at the same grade as the original plan filed. We are when that original filing was made, we provided all of the sewer connections, water, sewer, utilities, all of that was presented in that original filing. There's no change with respect to what Mr. Bonfiglio wants to do. He wants to build on the same footprint that has always been presented for this particular lot. He is no sewer line on his property except the sewer exiting his building. The sewer line that travels through this property that has been installed for the city of Peabody needs to be relocated. That's something that the previous owner is working on with the Department of Public Services, and we've come to a situation where we intend and are presenting bonding money, cash, to ensure that that sewer line will be moved. But this plan, we're in the same box, we're the same lot, same grading. There is no drainage activity but for a roof drain that impacts this property. None of that is a change. Changes the original calculations that were filed, and we have no impact given our construction plan on the wetland, but for the enhancement of the river front. We have filed an updated proposal for that enhancement, which has been presented by Bill Manuel. So while I apologize for the fact that there were not calculations submitted specifically for this lot, there are no new calculations, I think, to be considered by the board, in as much as everything we're proposing is in accordance with the originally approved plan.
That may be, Jack, but I'd like. Go ahead.
I think part of that, I think one of the concerns or the issues might be because now this particular parcel is under its own NOI. I think the information that is dependent on this location needs to be submitted rather than having public services to have to go back to other projects and pull data out and take time to find all the information that might be pertinent. It should be submitted by itself, it should submitted for that NOI independently, even though it might be the same material. But
I agree, Mike. I think that by breaking up the one parcel into three, we required that they submit information on each parcel. And there's one parcel that's not being touched at all. And it's degraded. We've asked them to clean it up. Mr. Bonfiglio's parcel has, it's pretty clean, and we want to see the calculations and all of the engineering stuff that has to be done to his project before we can move forward. I mean, it's a separate project. Going backward does not help us.
It is separate, yes, to the extent that, yes, I have filed a new notice because
new.
our old notice expired.
Right.
Had we been prudent enough to come forward and ask for the extension, a second extension for the original order, we wouldn't have, this filing would never have been made. So we haven't changed anything.
I'm not suggesting you changing anything. We're just saying we need the documentation to be resubmitted to engineering. And Bob Langley has stated that.
But, this is in part my fault because I started this project off trying to piggyback on but now we're here, I want to say it's almost 5 months.
Yeah, but no one's pointing fingers, Jack. We're just telling you what we need to get done. And we need to get that before we can move forward on this project, that's all. And we've said that for a month. We haven't moved forward on this at all.
What? No, I mean, since my first filing, I'm not.
Yeah, but I wasn't even alive then, so, you know.
Yeah, you were.
Oh, okay.
You remember the board.
Okay, at any rate, we're in a position where we cannot approve something we can't, that's expired, I guess. That's the position. And so please resubmit it to Jack, to Bob Langley, and let's get this thing moving. You know what has to be done. And we're stuck because we can't do anything with what you used to have.
Yeah, through the chair, my suggestion would be, and I know this is unfortunate, Jack, and Mr. Bonfiglio seems like such a nice person. And I know that he really wanted to get this started, and I wanted to get this project started as well before everything starts popping and that riverfront, so he could do that work a lot easier. But the issue is that on page 7 of the NOI, you guys check off that you have to meet stormwater standards and that you guys submitted, you know, the checklist and everything, but you didn't submit anything. And then the real issue was that Chris Mello didn't show up to the site visit. And, you know, I don't know why Bob didn't reach out. That's none of my business. But here we are. So it's just unfortunate that it is all happening like this, because the last thing I want is for this to be continued as well. So my suggestion would just be draft a narrative explaining what we all already know, that it's part of DP file number 55-801, and you're working with Will Politz on it, and then maybe submit the checklist and all the calcs that go with it so that we have it as part of this file with that narrative. I think that's really what he's looking for.
Okay.
Okay. So do you want to, we need a motion to continue?
Make a motion to continue to, is it gonna be ready, Jack, in a month, or
Yes.
make a motion to continue to May 11th?
I'll be in tomorrow,
Is
though,
there
right?
Anybody that wants to speak on this matter outside of the commission that may be in attendance?
Good point, Michael.
Is there anybody there, Lucia, that?
Nope, no one is raising their hand just yet.
No.
And yes, Jack, I will be in, and Bob should be in as well. If I'm not there when you come in tomorrow, I'll probably leave around 12:30. You can just have Carla or whoever put it on my desk, and leave one for Bob and me.
Yeah, I'm not going to have it tomorrow. I know that.
Oh, okay.
And tomorrow is our deadline for the next meeting, correct?
Oh, no. If it's a continued item, you have until the 27th.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, for this particular one, you know, whereas he's not, I don't think he's gonna be like reviewing the actual stormwater calcs. He just wants to have them. But the deadline is the 27th for continued items, and we're kind of sticking to that 2 weeks
That's
out.
fine. I can make that.
All right, great.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks,
Thanks,
Jack.
Jack.
I'll make a motion to continue the public hearing until
Second.
November, May 11th.
We have a second?
I'll second.
Roll call.
Go ahead and do a roll call. Motion to continue 49 Tremont to May 11th. Made by Mr. Vivaldi, seconded by Mr. Rizzo. Roll call. Chairman Lazares,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Rizzo,
Yes.
Secretary Vivaldi,
Yes.
Commissioner Athos,
Yes.
Commissioner Comac,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Cavicchio.
Yes.
All right, 7-0. It is continued until May.
Thank you.
Next one is a continued public hearing on notice of intent submitted by William Manuel Wetlands and Land Management, Inc. for Regency Realty Trust, Alfred DeMambro trustee. The proposed project is construction of 2 buildings and site improvements, paving, utilities, etc. in riverfront to the North River. Property is known as 1113 Wallace Street, map 65, lot 41A in Peabody. I think we got a note to continue this.
Yes, the attorney Phil Durkin, legal representation for the property owner, has asked for a 2-month continuance until
June.
the June agenda, because they did the escrow, the money has been, the money for the peer review has been accepted by the city, and I did receive the final contract today. If I didn't get that contract signed today, I would have been suggesting and recommending that you guys deny the project, but they got it to me like right after I spoke to them, so we're good to go. So I would just say continue until June. I think I believe it's June 8th, but to be safe, you might want to just say to the June hearing in case for some reason it changes.
Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to continue the public hearing of June 2022.
Second.
All
Roll
right, so the
call.
motion to continue made by Secretary Vivaldi, seconded by Vice Chairman Rizzo. Roll call. Chairman Lazares,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Rizzo,
Yes.
Secretary Vivaldi,
Yes.
Commissioner Athos,
Yes.
Commissioner Comac,
No.
no, Commissioner Green,
Yeah.
Commissioner Cavicchio.
Yes.
All right, so the item was continued 6-1 with Bruce voting no on the continuance until the June hearing.
Thank you. Moving on to item 9, continued public hearing for request of determination of applicability submitted by Anthony Capichetti of Hayes Engineering for Mills 58 2 LLC, care of Edward Greeley, applicant and owner. Proposed work is the construction of a parking lot and stormwater infiltration system for rooftop runoff within 100 feet of an isolated vegetated wetland under local jurisdiction. Property is known as 58 Pulaski Street, map 53, lot 87, Peabody, Mass. I guess we're still waiting for test pit information at the proposed spillway. It does not fall under, what does it say? Revised plan proposed work now technically falls under an NOI. The last hearing, the commission seemed to tell the applicant they might be satisfied with an RDA. I'm still looking for an NOI on this one. Determinations expire in 3 years from the issuance of the file, can be destroyed with permission of the state determinations. Staff has strongly suggested an as-built submitted to record engineering for review after the work is complete. And typically the rule of thumb for determinations, if you need to add more than 3 conditions, it probably should be an NOI. Anybody on the board have any comments?
Well, yeah, Will had 5 bullets in his interoffice memo saying he's still waiting for more information about the work within the close proximity of the isolated vegetated wetland, soil testing to be conducted within the retention basin. Soil logs need to be submitted within 7 days of the testing. Bottom of the retention basin shall have a minimum of a 2-foot separation between the bottom of the basin and seasonal high groundwater. And that a licensed LSP shall sign off on the proposed stormwater design and fencing and signage for the parking area. So he still had those questions. So I would imagine that we would need to continue this. I don't know if the petitioner wants to speak, but you know.
Mr. Capichetti?
Yeah, through the chair, I think that Tony should definitely give his presentation because
Yeah.
the plan has changed really dramatically since when they first came here. Now they're working, I want to say 10 to 15 feet next to our isolated wetland. So you guys do have to think, last meeting you kind of said that it might be okay to keep it under an RDA, but he didn't have a plan, so you don't really know what you were agreeing to. So I think that you guys should look at it. I mean, they're definitely in the Wetlands Protection Act buffer zone now, and they're very, very close to the local wetlands. So I'm going to put it over to Tony and let you guys.
Thank you. So just to kind of cover what we discussed last time is what we had was a large parking and cleared area that the abutter next to us created a swale that directed water into a bordering vegetated wetland and exceeds that capacity, flows into what's now an isolated wetland on our property, and that also can't handle the flow coming from off-site. And then it just discharges back into to our neighbor at 56 Pulaski Street into their parking lot. I believe Chairman Lazarus was out there during the winter and saw the icing that's happening over there. And what we had said was, where this isn't a problem of our doing, we're more than happy to fix it. And we did discuss getting closer to the wetland in order to do so at the last hearing. And I did bring up whether an RDA was still appropriate, and it was kind of indicated that we should continue to proceed down this route. We do have soil testing on the site. We just don't have it in the new proposed, Will calls it a retention basin. What it is, it's kind of an inlet. If I can share my screen, I'll show you the revised plan. So as we discussed, what happens is the water flows into this wetlands. It overflows. I'm sorry, it overflows in this direction into the isolated wetland. And then the isolated wetland is now kind of just coming out onto this property. So what we did was we want to kind of tie our kind of inlet into the edge of the isolated wetland. And if you go out here, it's not a high functioning wetland. It's a lot of brush. It looks like there was some material kind of stored that impounds this water. We're going to actually create a little bit higher of a berm in this area. So all the water is forced into this this kind of depression, and the depression's designed so this is essentially clean water. We have a bit of a sump that allows for some infiltration because in order to pick this up, we had to get rid of our rooftop infiltration area. So this is sized for meeting the recharge requirement. We hold it here and then it would flow into a double grade catch basin. and down a 24-inch pipe, that we would be constructing a 24-inch pipe. Sorry, who's gonna figure out how to get out of that. And that would tie into the existing drainage. So we would be reconstructing a drainage pipe through the entirety of the property to reroute this flow through our site. And then we would add catch basins on our site to handle our new impervious surface over the old gravel area. We're more than happy to do some testing in here, although I think it's something that could be conditioned that we just meet the DPS memo. We have testing in 3 locations, and the water table rises gradually from 36.4 to 36.8 to 37.3, and then we assumed 37.75 in our basin here for a water table elevation. And we maintain the 2 feet of separation. If we had to, we could resubmit a modification that raised this up, another 2 or 3 inches to maintain the 2 feet. Again, it is just taking the surface runoff that's coming through the farm fields that flows into this property. And then the bulk of the project remains the same, taking this gravel area and repaving it, where we're going to be doing work in the at the edge of the isolated wetland, creating this berm. We're going to take out the existing concrete here. Before, we were just going to pave over it. We'll pull the concrete out and repave it, so we can adjust this grade to provide a berm, and then just force the water into this inlet here. This would essentially function similar to a rain garden or a bioretention area. It would actually be somewhat of an enhancement to this isolated wetland. The 100-foot buffer zone line is in this area here. So the only work going on in the 100-foot buffer is just this regrading and revegetation of this area. As I said, this is something that we're undertaking to solve an existing problem that is under no fault of our own. And the requirements from Will are pretty minor. To perform the test pits, again, I think that could be conditioned. The as-built could be conditioned if the board was so inclined. And the fact that we're close to this isolated wetland, it is only local's jurisdiction, and we're actually enhancing and allowing it to have a functioning relief to accept this drainage and bring it into the system that it goes to currently.
Just a clerical question here. We are probably going to have to issue a positive determination of applicability and then recommend an NOI.
That's correct.
So I'd like to make that motion then.
Go ahead. Arthur, well, is there anybody in the audience that wants to speak before we make a motion? Lucia, anybody there?
You guys can see too, but I do not see any hands.
Okay. So do we want to make, you want to make the motion for the positive determination tonight?
It'll be one thing, issue a positive determination of applicability and request that NOI be filed.
Do we get a second?
Sure, I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call?
All right, so there's a motion on the floor made by Arthur, seconded by Rita Marie to issue a positive determination, asking the applicant to file an NOI. Roll call, Chairman Lazaris,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Rizzo,
Yes.
Secretary Vivaldi,
No.
Commissioner Athos,
Yes.
Commissioner Comac,
No.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
and Commissioner Cavicchio.
Yes.
All right, so give me 1 second. So it seems that it passes 5-2 with Mr. Vivaldi and Mr. Comac voting no. So unfortunately, Tony, you're gonna have to go back to the drawing board and file an NOI.
All right, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
You.
Did I get that right? That there was 2 no votes, correct? Vivaldi and Comac?
That's correct.
All right.
Thank you again.
Thank you. Item number 10. It's a discussion item regarding 8 Cobb Ave. Is Jack here?
No, he hasn't, even if he was here, he didn't submit anything to me. I believe he wants to be at the meeting next month, so I'll just leave him on the agenda and hopefully he gets me something soon, or I'll chat with him offline. I'm just hesitant. The reason why I asked him to come to the meeting was the last time I gave him a verbal, he went way beyond what I told him, and it started a big ordeal in the neighborhood where everyone was calling me, complaining, and he was telling them that I told him he could do it. And then it was my word against his. So I wanted you guys, I wanted it to be transparent so everyone could know what happened, and I'm not playing favorites.
All right. So we're gonna just continue it then?
I don't even think you have to continue it. It's not really, it's,
Okay.
you can just leave it on the agenda, not, you don't even have to read it.
It's just a discussion item.
Okay. Moving on, enforcement
Can
orders.
I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
Lucia, regarding the emergency cert?
Yep.
Is that-
Did we want to take, that would be nice if we could take him first, because I feel like it could be like a 5-minute conversation. This poor man has been through a lot the last few weeks, to say the least. So if that would be amazing. I didn't want to say anything because I know there's a lot of people waiting for the country club, but I know Mr. Kapler would be beyond words if you guys could just ratify this quickly, and hopefully you don't have too many questions. He has an LSP hired. Is that okay through the chair?
Yes. Which item is it?
It is the addendum. It's the emergency certificate. George, I'm gonna promote you to a panelist.
Can you read it? Because I don't have it.
I'll read it.
Okay.
You want me to read it now?
Yes.
It's an addendum to the April 13th, 2022 Concom Conservation Meeting. This emergency certification to be for a request for an emergency cert made by Clean Soils Environmental for the property owner George Kepler to comply with the MCP, was Mass Comprehension, I forget what MCP guidelines for a release of home oil fuel in close proximity to the Norris Brook located at 1 Hoover Terrace. Work must be done in the following, in the timeframe to begin no later than 4/25/2022 and to end no later than 6/23/2022.
Thank you. And
Yeah, George is on, but I can help speak for him. He is on. From what I understand was, I mean, George, do you want to speak? I don't want to speak for you, unless you want me to.
No, I guess the LSP person, Kevin MacArthur is not on the call. I thought he would be. So yeah, I was removing a.
Oh, wait, he is. Hold on.
Okay.
Kevin McAndrews. I'm going to promote him.
Yeah, okay.
He's been promoted, and if we could just move on, because we have a lot of people waiting for the Salem Country Club.
Sure. So I was having a underground oil tank removed. And obviously, when the Lieutenant Sean Murphy of the fire department was there, some of the readings were higher, so it became a reportable DEP issue. I've hired, you know, an LSP and they've contacted me with another group that'll actually dig out the contaminated soil. Work is to begin on the 25th of April and hopefully be concluded fairly quickly. Any technical questions Kevin could answer you.
Anybody have any questions?
No, I don't have any.
So basically all the right people have been contacted. Everyone's been hired. They got their ducks in a row. They're moving on. I issued the emergency cert. I've spoken to DEP. I've spoken to the fire department. Basically, we're here because you have to ratify the emergency cert.
Do I got a motion to ratify?
Motion to ratify.
Second? Roll call.
All right, motion to ratify made by Vice Chairman Rizzo, seconded by Secretary Vivaldi. Roll call, Chairman Lazares,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Rizzo,
Yes.
Secretary Vivaldi,
Yes.
Commissioner Athos,
Yes.
Commissioner Comack,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
and Commissioner Cavicchio.
Yes.
All right, so it's ratified. Kevin and George, please keep me in the loop like you both have been doing up to now. So just keep emailing me, even if you think I don't need to know about it, okay?
All right, thank you very much.
Thank
We hope
you.
to get cleaned up very quickly. Thank you.
All right. Are we into item 11? Yes?
Yes.
All right, enforcement order issued to the Salem Country Club for the following activities: removal of living trees, grinding, grubbing, stumps in buffer zones in close proximity to jurisdictional resource areas, and depositing wood chips in buffer zones and along local riverfront woods. Property address is known as 133 Forest Street, Peabody, Mass. I would like to begin, first of all, we never got a chance to deliberate this issue or talk about it until tonight. And a number of reasons for that was at the site visit, which was I'll say a public site. It was a public posting for a site visit to the country club. The commission was there, and because it was not posted.
Chairman,
What?
can I interrupt for a minute? I'm sorry. I think we need Barry Fogel as a panelist as well.
He's there. He has muted himself. He has to unmute himself when he's ready.
Oh,
no,
thank you,
I'm
Barry.
here. Also, Kevin McIntyre, Lucia, if you would please promote him to a panelist.
Anyone else?
No, I see Bill Rocco, so just Mr. Yeah, there he is. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Chairman.
On the site visit, we were not allowed to discuss this because it was not a public hearing and there were more than 4 of us. So we went on a site visit using golf carts and toured all of the destruction and damage done in the taking down of trees. To begin with, this commission can only comment about the trees taken down in what's known as the jurisdictional areas, wetlands, riverfront. We cannot comment or do anything about the rest of the trees in the country club. And I'm trying to establish a timeline, which we should look at doing for the next meeting of activities. The first thing that I have, and I'd like to be able to put this in writing so that people can review it and comment at our next meeting. I was with Lucia back in October 7th of 2021. We came out for a site visit and the country club told us they were taking down a few trees to improve play and allow sunshine to help grow grass. There were 20 trees that were approved in a sense to get taken down. That was it. And those were, I believe, around holes 6 and 7, Lucia.
Yes,
Okay,
and they were permitted under an order of conditions.
right. The next thing that happened, Mayor Tree was contacted or hired by the country club to take down trees. And they didn't stop at the 20. We said it was okay. And they didn't notify us or anything. And they started, I guess, on the weekend of January 15, 2022. And Lucia was notified like the day before, 114, that they would remove trees associated with DEP file 55-896 in work near holes 6 and 7. I don't know what day Mayor Tree finished cutting down the trees, but there was a cease and desist order once we found out they had gone beyond the 20 trees, and that was issued on, I believe it was issued by 127, and there was a violation order issued on January 31. We went on a site visit without the public being present on March 28. The number of trees. The fact that the country club came to us for 20 trees and cut down 700 is very distressing to the Conservation Commission, not just because it's beyond a jurisdictional area, but conservation is everybody's business. And it affected, to me, it affects the wildlife, it affects where birds can roost and nest. And yeah, there's a million more trees on the property, but these trees were, we didn't give anybody permission to take them down. And you guys didn't ask us about more than 20 trees. So it's not the only time this happened. And what I'd like to do is get a restoration plan for replanting of the trees that you took down in the jurisdictional area. And I would like to get, and we're not even talking about anything about fining tonight. I don't want to get into that until we get our hands around a restoration plan. We're also waiting for, I believe Devin was going to give us a delineation of wetlands by using GPS markers. We have not seen that yet. So until we can figure out where the trees were removed in the jurisdictional area, we really have no way to manage anything about, fining or saying bad, but you guys did take advantage and went way beyond and never told us you were cutting down more than 20 trees. And I don't know how to stop you from doing it again. I will say that there was a situation, I want to say 2017 at the Senior Open. You cut down a number of trees back then to make a parking lot. You did not tell us you were doing it. There was an enforcement order issued, and you guys filed an NOI on 8/21/17 with an order of conditions, and you guys are out of compliance on that one. Condition 51, all work must be completed within 6 months of the issuance of the order. And as far as I know, no one ever, you guys haven't done anything on that one. So I want to roll all this together when we start looking at how many trees you need to restore. and get a date when you can get it done. And I'm kind of aware of the fact that you really don't want to start doing this till August because you've got people playing golf. And the trees may or may not take before that. Come up with a restoration plan with dates. And I want you to report to us on a monthly basis as to the status of the restoration plan. And I would like to see every 3 months a tour of the country club showing us what you've done to restore the trees. And this may take, you know, a year or two because I want to see the trees growing. And, you know, it's like part of the process. Anybody else have any comments on this?
I had like a couple of things to say. Well, in addition to what you said, Stu, I think that we need to have another site visit to see the delineation as
once we get it
discussed at the meeting. But I also would like to make a motion to retain an independent engineering consultant to assist the commission on any proposed mitigation requirements for the restoration plan methodology and what restoration plans will even include. And that cost will be borne by the Salem Country Club.
Okay. You want to make that motion now?
Well, before we could do that now, I'm not quite finished, but yes.
We'll wait until the presentation and then do it.
Okay. So I concur with basically everything you said, Stu, but I don't, although I think there were a total of 683 trees that were cut down, of which majority of those were outside the jurisdictional area of any resource. I'm not so sure they're outside any jurisdiction as to whether or not they violated other benefits that they enjoy through the city on reduction of taxes for maintaining open space. So when you said, I want to respectfully disagree that it's outside our jurisdiction, it's certainly not outside the parameters of the city of Peabody, and anything that we can do to help in that with regard to that, I believe we should make ourselves available. So I think what I think impacts outside the resource area need also to be looked at also.
I agree. Anybody else in the commission?
Yeah, I just have a question. The last meeting we were at, there was sort of like an understanding that some of the trees that were cut within the jurisdictional area, that some of them were being maintained and therefore they didn't count as they didn't count really to, you know, violating the wetlands law. But if these trees were being maintained within the wetland jurisdiction, and you go ahead and cut them down, they're no longer going to be maintained anymore. They don't exist. So whatever figures we look at in terms of how many total trees within the, I think obviously we should include the ones that were being maintained as ones that weren't being maintained.
Okay. Anybody else? Lucia, do we hear from the country club now?
Well, I know you guys keep talking about all the trees. That's unfortunate, the trees, but remember, they also did bank work. They did work on the bank, and they put a new, whatever that thing is on top. I'm not a golfer, so they altered a bank of a jurisdictional wetland that they know is jurisdictional because they got an after the fact RDA for the irrigation pump that's like 10 feet out, but then they did work on the bank and put whatever that, I don't know what that greenway or whatever fairway, I don't know what that T-top. So, I mean, I would like to know what that looked like before. From what I understand from people calling me and telling me, that was a vegetated bank. So there are trees, but there was also this bank of of a water body.
Well, there may have been trees on that bank also, not just understory.
Not just plants, yeah. I mean, we saw the bank on a trip on the tour, and we saw geese in the water, and they were climbing out onto the land through the plants on the other side. But the entire area where we were was clear and was resodded, and it may have looked picturesque, but it was altered, and we did not, it should not have been.
Well, it was covered with geese droppings as well, because that's what they love. They love coming up. They don't like having to scurry through understory.
No, I understand. That's why it's there, to keep the geese from cluttering up stirring up the ground.
Well, no, I think that what they did actually, I don't think they want geese dropping where the geese were dropping. They're dropping on the brand new area that was made.
Right. My point is that they left the vegetated wetland there, the way it is on the other side. The geese would have a bigger problem climbing out onto the golf course. Don't know if they would, but that's my opinion.
I suggest we let them present so we can continue with this.
Okay. Again, we're still waiting for the delineation of wetlands from using a GPS system, so we all know where it was or is.
So can they report on this now?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm happy to start off, Mr. Chairman. Barry Fogel from Keegan Worland with the Country Club. So what we've done since the site visit, and I just wanted to add something to your chronology, Mr. Chairman. We also were before you on March 23rd. You had a special public hearing before the site visit on the 28th. So that was the step that was originally scheduled for February, but delayed until March 23rd. We were in front of you and gave you some preliminary information. And so at the site walk and at that hearing on the 23rd, we indicated that we would have Weston and Sampson perform an initial phase of delineation to at least try to verify the limits of the resource areas facing the parts of the country club where work was done, so that we could refine that figure that we shared with you that showed where the buffer zones were and indicated where trees that had been cut were located relative to the buffer zones and portions of the golf course that are and have been regularly maintained. And so we have the first stages of the delineation completed. While it hasn't been mapped yet by Weston and Sampson, it will be soon, and we will be able to present that to you before the next meeting that you just were suggesting we have. But we were able to refine the figure that was preliminary that showed where the trees were. And in a minute, I'll have Devin from Weston and Sampson share her screen and we can clarify for you. But it didn't change. In some instances, the GIS boundary that DEP has for what they show as wetlands were accurate. In some instances, the delineation that Weston and Sampson did showed that DEP's boundary was actually a little further into the course than it actually is. And in other instances, we actually found that DEP's line was not as far into the course as it was. So it kind of all balanced out net-wise into very little change in the number of trees that were within jurisdiction in areas of the course that are maintained. But before I have Devin put up that image, I want to clarify two things. One, Commissioner Athis mentioned something about trees being maintained. That was not what we were referring to. We were suggesting that trees were cut in some instances in portions of the course that are regularly maintained. And so it wasn't a matter of cutting trees that were being somehow trimmed or maintained. It was they were within the footprint of the areas that the course regularly maintains for fairway or rough, or just off the edge of the rough, on the edge of the treed areas. The other thing is that the course fully recognizes that the shrubs and low vegetation that were on that bank of the pond near the second tee is in jurisdiction. We're not disputing that. That is one very specific area where the restoration plan that is being developed and that will be presented will include restoring shrub vegetation to that bank to complete the presence of vegetation on the bank all the way around that pond. So first, Devin, if Lucia, if you could share or allow Devin Herrick from Weston and Sampson to share the screen, is that possible?
Panelists should have the ability to share their screen.
Oh, okay, good.
Just let me know if you're able to see the image.
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
So Devin, if you had also at the same time, actually, you could put up the table, you know, the summary of, do you have that?
I can try. This screen sharing, it looks like it's only letting me do one window at a time as opposed to my whole screen, but let me see if I'm able to alter that.
Well, do that one first before you can.
All right, sure. Let me pick a new screen for you.
Thank you.
How about this?
That's right. So if the members in the commission and the public, we gave some preliminary data before. Now these numbers are revised based on the partial delineation of resource area boundaries that Devin and her crew have done. The total number didn't change. It's still 683. 450 of the trees that were cut are outside of the wetland jurisdictional areas. 233 are within jurisdictional areas, again, by almost entirely buffer zones. And of those, 139 are in areas of the course that are maintained. That's what I was talking about in responding to Commissioner Athas's comment. And 94 have been determined to be in parts of the course that are not regularly maintained. When we were in front of you in March, a couple of weeks ago, that number was 89. So the movement of the resource area boundaries and the buffer zone boundaries slightly changed some of the distribution of these numbers, but they're substantially the same. It's still about 94. The smallest number of the total number of trees cut are in areas of the course that were not previously maintained, but are in buffer zones or jurisdictional area. So Devin, thanks for that. Now, if you could go back to that figure, that'd be great.
Absolutely.
So it may be, it's hard to read, obviously, the language in the plan, but if you could first focus up on the notes in the upper right-hand corner, it'll help folks. So the jurisdictional boundaries that we're showing on this plan are the partial boundaries relative to internal maintained portions of the country club property. And I'll explain with Devin in a second that she didn't go all the way around, for example, a vegetated wetland where the outside boundary of that wetland is away from the golf course, because we were trying to establish the buffer zone boundaries internal to the golf course. And then this work was done by Weston and Sampson in the last couple of weeks. They were out there on March 30th, April 1st, and the 5th. So now if you could go to the legend, Devin, that would be great. So, the purple triangles show where the T's are, the dots, the large dark dots are the greens, and then the purple lines sort of mark the middle line of the fairways on the course. You'll see that. The gray area are the limits of the 100-foot buffer zone to resource areas other than your local streams, and the 200-foot buffer zones to the streams. And that's based on these actual delineations that were done of the areas facing the course. And then the orange area overlaying that shows the parts of that jurisdictional buffer zone that's in parts of the course that are regularly maintained. As I said, fairways, tees, greens, the rough, and the near portions of the tree line. And then 3 colors are used for the trees that were cut. The yellow dots are trees that are outside those limits based on the delineation. The green dots are trees in maintained areas of the course, and the red dots are that's the 94 that we just looked at on that table that are in parts of the course that are in jurisdiction, but not have been previously maintained. So why don't we start, Devin, by sort of focusing up there on the top left. That's the 15th hole that folks who are on the site walk may remember, the outside boundary to the north. And there's a, let's see, Devin, if you could pull that, yeah. So again, the gray areas, there's you can see in the middle, I don't know if your cursor can move, Devin, to show the stream that, yeah, that's where the stream that crosses that fairway daylights, which creates the limits of the buffer zone from that. And again, you have the yellow dots are outside of the buffer zones, the green dots are in the buffer zone in maintained areas, and those red dots are the trees that are outside the boundary of the area that had been previously maintained. And that's reflected throughout this figure. So we could speak to any particular area that you wanted to talk about. Devin, if you could actually pull the image down to that part where the, I don't know if it's on 3, the 3rd hole, where there was some, yeah, right there. So if the commission members remember, and Lucia, you remember up from the site walk, there was an area to the left there where those red dots are, where there was still some branch debris, small branch debris that was left in place after your initial site visit in January, when you issued the cease and desist, and you told the course not to proceed with any additional activity of any kind. At the meeting on March 23rd, and then again during the site walk, in fact, the purpose of the site walk initially, when we talked about it on the 23rd, was to at least get you out there to see what was on the course, but to also get your okay for some cleanup of those areas to be undertaken without any mechanical activity, but just to remove some remaining debris that would make it safer for golfers as the season began. So that was that area where there had been those sort of small branches from some trees, and that was an area that was cleaned up. So Bill Rocco, the superintendent, has undertaken some very minor cleanup activity that we discussed with you, and that's all that's occurred in these areas. So we can focus on any particular area that you want. Devin, actually, if you could pull it back to the second, to that pond and the second tee, I just want to emphasize what we were just talking about as a final comment. So right there, the triangle below the number 2 is the second tee, and it's in that area of the bank of the pond, which you can see if you could move your cursor and just kind of show the boundary of the edge of the pond. That's the area where some low vegetation was removed, and the restoration plan will most certainly include restoration of shrubs in that area. So the final comment we want to make is that in developing a restoration plan, it's really sort of an open question that we want to discuss as to sort of the premise of replacing trees on the golf course or coming up with some other mitigation that is appropriate. Obviously, the objective of the work that was done was to remove trees along the edges of the fairways that were creating shadow and creating other problems for parts of the course that were not getting as much air and light, and create actually the requirement for the superintendent to try to use other methods to have the course in the condition that golf courses need to be in, which might include the application of more fertilizer or something else that sort of is counterproductive if you can actually get the grass to grow and to remain dry if you have less shading and less debris from the trees. But so planting new trees sort of would be going in the other direction of creating a situation that would over time require further maintenance. So as we continue to have a discussion with the commission, we want to actually explore options for restoration apart from what we talked about just now, what I talked about for the bank of the pond, is other things that might be available for restoration, environmental benefits, maybe on the golf course, maybe elsewhere. It's not uncommon for conservation commissions to have mechanisms for undertaking or contributing to other types of improvement projects, but that's something we want to discuss with you as we move forward. So we have this plan and we'll be able to present that to you once it's completed. This is preliminary. The delineation is still being wrapped up, but at least we were able to get these boundaries and the calculations done for tonight. You will be getting additional information and on the schedule that you want. I know you have a hearing again on May 11th, so by that time we can have additional information for you as well. And perhaps by that time, if you are going to proceed with hiring a third-party reviewer to supply you with some peer review, we may be able to work with them hopefully before the next meeting or as soon as possible. So with that, we're happy to answer your questions. Devin, I think we cover everything that sort of catches us up to speed now?
I believe so.
When is the delineation going to be completed?
The delineation has been completed. It's the mapping. We were only able to produce one map that was going to be good enough to be able to share tonight. So we just wanted to get this one to you folks because we thought this would be most critical, but all of the boundaries have been delineated and the flags are in place.
So, it's important to us to get out there as soon as possible to see where those areas are and what's taking place. Because I know we talked about there was many trees outside resource areas that you took down, and I thought the discussion was cleaning up some of those areas. I don't recall saying that you could remove the debris in any of the resource areas that you cut down.
No, we gave them permission to remove debris in the areas that were non-jurisdictional.
Right, but
Right.
Mr. Fogel just explained that they just cleaned up areas in the resource area.
Well, if I could, Mr. Rizzo, you actually, I recall you walked in that particular area near on the third fairway, and we had a direct discussion at the meeting on the 23rd that the purpose of the site walk was to show you the areas where there was debris that we thought would create a hazard to golfers, and that we wanted to be able to at least just take those loose branches out of there, not to grind any stumps, not to bring any fill in or to do any kind of earthwork. We just wanted to be able to pick up branches and the like. And so we pointed to those areas, having actually highlighted those areas at the meeting on the 23rd of March. That's I mean, that's about the extent of what was done. There might have been some, in other places, some stump grindings that were mounded that might have been sort of raked out, but no earthwork, no work has been done to make any kind of alteration to any area.
My recollection is a little different. It was that we gave you permission to clean up the debris in the areas that were non-jurisdictional. And we were waiting for the delineation to decide whether or not it was within jurisdictional areas or not. But I guess what you're telling us now is the debris has all been cleaned up and you're ready to open the gates to let people golf.
Well, that would have happened anyway. I mean,
well,
there was
now, but so when we go out there and we will not see any debris on the course at this point. It's all been cleaned up.
Well, I think that's not what we're saying. There was no, you saw the course. There was no, the only debris that we were talking about was on that third hole. Everything else is as you saw it. So it was just that one area that Mr. Rizzo was looking at more closely. But the other thing is this, the delineations did, as I indicated, it's Devin, the BVWs are flagged, right? The boundaries are flagged. Correct?
Yes, all the boundaries are flagged, top of banks and BVWs and isolated wetlands. Yep.
Right. So those can be looked at. And what happened in the map that we have up on the screen is that in some instances, the boundary of the buffer zone moved back, and in other instances it moved in. And so there were some trees that we showed initially to you on the 23rd as being in jurisdiction that ended up not being in jurisdiction based on the delineation. And in other instances, there were some small areas where we had determined initially from a preliminary look at the GIS data from DEP that they were not in, and they were later determined to be in using the initial delineation. So then it washed net from a net standpoint. I guess, Devin, you might be able to say it better than me, but no boundary was significantly different. I mean, there's minor differences from
Mr. Fogel, you're missing the point. Yeah, we understand that the GPS would give you a more accurate boundary, and stuff will show up that moved, if you will, but you guys cut down a ton of trees and you didn't tell anybody you were going to do it. Now, admittedly, we would say to you, we can't give you, it's not in a jurisdictional area in a lot of cases, but you certainly should have gone to another department to get permission to cut the trees down. Just doing this without any permission is criminal.
No, it's not. Well, it's not criminal, number one, and number two, we've acknowledged that Mr. Fischel said at the meeting on the 23rd, and the course does not deny that work was done without a prior filing. That we're past that. We acknowledge that. The issue now is getting towards a restoration plan.
I think we have to see the course again and see the delineation, and then we can just start negotiating or come up with a restoration plan that works for all of us.
Absolutely.
When can we get out there again?
Yeah.
Well, when you want to be on the site for another site walk.
We do, but we want to make sure that everything's marked out there for us.
The flags are out there now, so whenever is convenient for you and the rest of the commission and Mr. Fogel, I'm sure that we can make that work.
I know, but I want a plan to go with it. It's difficult to be out there and not have a drawing in your hand, a colored drawing that shows it, so we can compare and look at the delineation and the plan and the trees in those areas. So we need a plan to go with it. When can that be done?
Well, what scale are you thinking the plan's gonna be at?
Full size.
I don't care, 2x3 sheet is fine. You can fold them up.
No, but I'm talking about Devin, if you were preparing, a plan that shows the boundaries, how long would it take you to develop a plan that, as Mr. Rizzo is asking about, where in the field, they can look at the plan and see compared to where the flags are noted on it?
I think we could have that prepared by the end of this week. We just had to make a choice for tonight to what plan to focus our efforts, and we wanted to make sure we had this one available to the commission. But
Okay.
we can have a plan with all the resource areas and the flags ready for you by the end of the week.
Okay.
So we can
So-
schedule a
So
tour.
we got to
after that.
schedule, I want to schedule another site visit to get out there and see that.
Just one additional thing, the,
I have to say, I'm concerned, I'm angry, and I'm nervous that when we're not out there, what you guys are doing there, I don't trust you. Okay, so we want to get out there as soon as we can to look at that plan and the delineation and make further evaluations and give you more guidance without you going about your business, without us knowing what's happening out there.
I would add what we see on the screen before us would be valuable to have out in the field. So, like.
Yeah, 11 by 17s are great in the field to see, but full-size sheets.
The color.
Should accompany that.
Right.
But it's, because you might have to look at a full-size sheet, which you can fold up, it's harder to see, but
Sure.
I agree, 11 by 17s are better in the field, but many times I've got full-size sheets that I have to carry around too, so it works both ways.
I would also like to see a narrative of, what we're looking at, so that we're not trying to imagine something that's not there. So if you've got a delineation that shows trees that are gone, what are we looking at? And it should be in writing. All the trees that you took down, all the trees that, were in jurisdictional areas and so on.
There's been no grinding, of any stumps in any of the jurisdictional areas beyond, since our meeting.
Correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
I guess the other thing is that where I need a narrative is maybe by whole, location by hole. What are we looking at hole 18?
Chairman, if you don't mind me clarifying so I can make sure I get you exactly what you need. Are you looking for a breakdown of trees by hole, like a table, something along those lines?
Yeah, or a map for each hole, showing me where I'm at.
Yeah, I think that's what makes sense, is that we'll have this figure that's on the screen now broken up into segments that are digestible when you're in the field and you're looking at it. You don't have to try to get a magnifying glass, and that will have both that and the delineation with the wetland flag numbers will be available as you go hole by hole. I think that's what sounds like what you're looking to do.
It is.
It'll look very much like what you saw a couple of weeks ago. From the standpoint of getting those ready, Bill Rocco just communicated to me that the course is actually closed on April 25th, Monday, April 25th.
I wanted to play that day. Jeez.
So if that would probably be the most convenient time to have you out there. I mean, if that works.
Or 25?
April 25.
Patriots Day, right?
No, Patriots Day is next Monday, so it's a week.
18th, Stu.
Okay.
A week from Monday.
That's fine for me.
That would work for me. It would work for me.
Yeah, that's good for me too.
Okay, what time? 9
10
o'clock?
a.m.? Oh,
9
say it
o'clock?
again.
9 o'clock?
10 a.m.?
What?
10 a.m.?
I was looking for 9, but 10's okay by me.
That work for you, Bruce?
Huh?
Can the majority of the group meet on April 25th?
I can't meet. I gotta work.
I can
Yeah,
do
I'm
it after
trying-
10
I'm
a.m.
trying to look at my calendar.
After 10 a.m. I'm free.
All right,
Chair, while
tentatively,
everyone's
it's,
looking at their calendars, I would request that the file for my file, I will need one set of full plans and then whatever reduced copies for the site walk you're planning to submit, as well as I would like the wetlands report and all the field data sheets.
If I can add one thing, the reason we're closed is to have our parking lot resealed. So I'll just have to communicate with Lucia on where we'll park, and then we'll walk to the golf course. It won't be very far, either the tennis courts or my maintenance building. But just so everybody knows beforehand.
okay.
Okay. Devin, you have the field data available already for the delineation of the segments you delineated?
They're currently being typed up this week. So Lucia, when can I get that to you if we're planning to meet for the 25th? What date would you like it so that I can make sure it's over to you?
I would like it ASAP because I would like, ideally, I would like a couple days to look at it. I don't want you to just hand it to me on the 22nd. And yeah, I might not even be at work on the 22nd. So I just don't want it to be handed to me. And then, you know, we all go in cold. Like, how are you going to get these documents to all of the commissioners in that short time frame? That's what I'm a little concerned with. Like, are you going to mail everyone here a copy of all these plans?
Lucia, they have golf carts. They can drive them out to us.
Okay,
Well,
I mean,
let's be organized about this. So if we're meeting on the 25th, and I want to clarify something again, to avoid confusion and any disruption. This is a site visit that the golf club is welcoming the commission members and Lucia to. This is not a public site visit, and so I would encourage you to avoid trying to post this as a public meeting.
Mr. Attorney Fogel, with all due respect, please. I'm doing my job the way that I have been told and trained to do my job. If there are more than 3 commissioners, by law, I have been told that I have to post it. And yes, I understand very well that it is always up to the property owner if you want to allow people on your property. I understand that. I have never seen such an aggressive newspaper reporter as I did that week. So it's not my fault. It was him being aggressive. And maybe you guys, you know, it's up to you if you want to let people on. I've seen it go both ways. I've seen property owners welcome people and have them sign affidavits that if they injure themselves, they will not sue. I mean, that's really the main thing. So I did what I did because I was told to, and I will continue to do that. I will still post it.
I understand, and I'm not trying to give you advice. I understand you may be getting advice from your town city solicitor, but
it's the law.
To be clear, I'm speaking on behalf of the Salem Country Club that if you post it as a public meeting, we will have the same.
I didn't post it as a public meeting. I posted it as a site walk.
Well, then have you gotten, I'm not picking a fight. I'm asking for clarification. If you posted it as a site walk, is your advice from the city solicitor that that's something that's a public meeting?
It technically is because there are 4 commissioners there, which is why we need to post it so that we're being transparent. If we all just met out there and I didn't post that, you know that things would have gone a lot differently that day.
Again, I'm not arguing with you. I'm only saying that I've been doing this a long time. I'm familiar with the public meeting law. If long as a public board does not deliberate towards a decision. It's not, does not need to be posted. The fact that you choose to do it is fine, but I want to be clear that what we would ask again is that you open and close your public meeting and then join the club on a site walk where you members do not and did not on the 28th and would not again, because I know you're all careful, you don't deliberate while you're on that site walk, even if there are more than 3 of you. But this will not be at the country club's request. It will not be a site walk that the public or the press is invited to. So let's just, at least this time, be on the same page as to the process will follow, so there's no confusion.
I never invited the press. As you remember, me and you had a conversation
No.
right before we
Right.
met there. And right now, this is actually a public notice of the site visit by you guys saying that we're going to meet April 25th at 10 a.m. This is a public notice. So I just want to move on, but I'm doing what I'm being told to do by my superiors, and that's it.
Yes, we're fine with the public being aware that there's a site walk. That's different than having the site walk be treated as a public meeting, which it sounds like we agree that it is not. So what we will do before the 25th, today is the 13th. It might not be Friday, and I presume your offices are closed Monday, but probably Tuesday, the 19th, or Wednesday, the 20th, no later than the 20th, you will have the maps we just spoke about and the wetland delineation forms. However many copies you want, Lucia, 10, you have 7 members, pick a
Yeah,
number.
well, the problem is if you give me copies for everyone, now you're putting it on me to make sure that it gets out to them on time. And if you give it to me on Wednesday and I don't have time until perhaps Thursday, they're not going to get it on time for a site visit on the 25th.
So how do
Lucia, I'd be happy
Hold on,
to.
Devin.
Barry, can I suggest that you have them delivered to our homes?
That's what I was wondering. Is that how you normally would appreciate it being done?
Well, then we know it's done.
Yeah, no. If that's the preferable approach.
Well, it beats the mail.
Yeah.
Which is
Devin,
certainly
you
not
have-
very
You
reliable.
can communicate with Lucia, get the addresses and deliver them before the 20th.
That's what I was going to say. I'm happy to take down the addresses as long as you folks are comfortable letting me know what they are. I can get them from Lucia, and we will make sure copies are delivered to you by at least the 20th.
Okay, I'm happy with that.
Good.
Yeah, it's great. Look, I want you guys to be part of the solution. I don't want you to do this again. I don't want to have to come back and keep saying you didn't tell us what you're doing. Just tell us what you're doing all the time.
Well,
it ain't a bad thing.
One thing in the long term, I think the club is looking to actually go through a process of maybe a determination of applicability that creates fixed no disturb zones on the course, following the approach in your local ordinance of there's the presumed no disturb zone, and we can actually maybe delimit in areas on the course that are no disturb, and then the areas of the course that are maintainable. That's probably and then you, Mr. Chairman, made the point of having some kind of frequent inspections to sort of report on how that's being met. But that probably is the long-term approach, is the best way to do it once we're through this enforcement stage.
Yeah, and I think
I
in
agree.
defining what's maintainable, trees to be maintained within resource areas, you got to define what maintain means. You got a limb, you got a dead branch, you got a limb, a branch or two, not cut down and not grind the stumps. That's not maintaining a tree. That's cutting down a tree. There's a difference. So we need to have a better definition of what maintain means.
Oh, sure. And I think that not just for trees, I think Mr. Rocco's looking for, any work being done within the course that's sort of his routine golf course maintenance. If it's near one of the brooks or one of the wetlands, we want you to know what area we all define together as being no disturb in what areas are within the golf course maintenance, if you will. So that's the long term. I think we've even talked about that as an option, but one last question I had was the mechanism for getting you a restoration plan. This item on the agenda refers to an enforcement order. I'm aware that a violation notice letter was sent. There is not an enforcement order as we sit here now, is there?
There will be. I just have not had time and everything. There wasn't really many action items to put on it, so I figured I'd wait until tonight, and I really don't have many action items. I will get it ASAP.
No, but so I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything that went out in the mail, but we're still operating under the directive of your cease and desist order and your violation notice. And we're proceeding on the premise that we're showing you where work was done, giving you that part, the delineation, so you know the boundaries of the buffer zones, and we can work from there on what was done to develop a restoration plan with you. In terms of, I know you're about to vote on a third-party reviewer. What's your usual timing for, do you have a list of third-party reviewers that you work from, or do you bid that, or what would you think is the timing on that?
Lucia?
I mean, is that something, if I can finish, is that something you think you might have someone on board to be able to be out there on the 25th?
Oh, that I don't know.
No, because you guys haven't even given us any money, so we don't even have a check in escrow. But I honestly don't even know what the action items are for the sale for this enforcement order. So I wrote down action items, restoration plan, and peer review. That's all I have written down. And then obviously the wetland delineation, but that by the time I have time to draft the enforcement, it sounds like I'll probably have the delineation in my hand.
Right. I guess that was my point. I don't think we need an enforcement order. I think the Salem.
No, I think we need an enforcement order to memorialize it with Mass DEP.
Well, it sounds like you'll be developing one once we're already pretty much have implemented most of what you're asking us to do in terms of defining the issues. But that's what I was curious about in terms of timing. You have not yet issued one, which is fine. I just, the way it was put on the agenda, it said enforcement order, and I didn't know if you actually already sent something out. Okay.
I apologize. I am a one-woman conservation commission, and I am extremely busy.
I'm not being critical. I'm just trying to be clear about this for the record, just so we know we're all on the same page.
We will communicate with you, when we have a peer, and probably have to tell you how much it's going to cost. And we will come up with a plan of how to implement that.
Great.
But I think we got to see the delineation first and see the site visit and make sure that we're all on the same page of where we're cleaning, what we're doing with the land.
Okay.
I mean, realistically, you guys are probably not our favorite people, not because you cut down the trees, but as a rule, country clubs put fertilizer like crazy on the lawn. You want it to grow. If you cut down trees, now you're talking about carbon imprint or footprint that's reduced, but we can rectify that. But fertilizers are not our favorite place. It gets into the water, it gets into the wetlands, and it's not, not what we want to see universally. If there was some other way to encourage grass growth, I'd say let's do it.
Well, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I just want to say that's the information we had to share. I'm glad we were able to present that, schedule the site visit for you to see it. We'll have the information out to you on or before the 20th, delivered to your residences, and then we'll plan to see you on the 25th. And also, I assume you're going to put on the agenda again for the May 11th meeting.
I'm sorry, repeat that again.
And you would have this on the agenda again for May 11th?
Yes.
Yep, okay.
And we'll
Thank
have
you.
more information by then.
Sure. No, well, we appreciate your attention to this. Thank
All
you.
right. I'm gonna try and finalize this chronology so that there's a record of everybody, what you guys did or didn't do, and it's not a hit or miss. 20 years ago they did this. It's like, put it down on paper and make it, part of the record. And make sure that we don't do it again.
Through
And I
the
think
chair,
the monthly reports and the periodic site visits will help us understand and you to be part of the community.
hey, Stu,
Hmm.
what about those two other open orders and conditions, the parking lot and there was one other one from the past?
The parking lot is the one that I mentioned in the beginning that I want to roll the restoration. I want to roll that into the restoration because that's never been done.
Did you guys want to put that old, do you want to put that as well in the enforcement order?
Yes.
Yes.
Because they are out of compliance with it.
Right.
Stu, can we go back to my motion?
Sure.
Okay, I'd like to I'll repeat it again, and make a motion to retain an independent engineering consultant to assist the Conservation Commission on any proposed mitigation and requirements, restoration plan and methodology, and what the restoration plan will include. And that Salem Country Club will bear the cost for that peer review.
Do I hear a second?
Seconded.
Roll call?
Right, and you want it to be an engineer, not a wetland scientist?
It's going to be a consulting engineering company. They're usually both.
Okay, a consulting engineering company.
Right.
With a wetland scientist, obviously. I'm assuming
Yes.
you're going to want the wetland scientist to review everything. Okay, made by Vice Chairman Rizzo, seconded by Ms. Green. Roll call. Chairman Lazares.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Rizzo.
Yes.
Secretary Vivaldi.
Yes.
Commissioner Athis.
Yes.
Commissioner Comack.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Green.
Yes.
Commissioner Trevicchio.
Yes.
All right, it's going to take me quite some time to get in touch with people. So Mike, if you have people in mind, you might want to send me their contacts, because the people that I have in mind, they are doing business in front of the city right now and in front of the Concom as well. So I'm not really sure if they could take it on as a consultant for the city.
Okay, I'll call you in the morning. Are you going to be around tomorrow morning?
Yep, I'll be around until noon, and then I'm gone until Tuesday, the 19th. So the action items that I'm going to put on the enforcement order are, I have to, you guys gotta, if you're not talking, you really gotta mute because it gets all funky on here. A restoration plan. Now, your restoration plan, is that for the trees or for the bank restoration? Because
Everything.
it sounds like they don't want to replant any trees.
Doesn't matter what they want. We're
All right,
talking about
so-
what we're going to agree to.
All right, so the restoration plan is going to include tree replanting as well as the bank restoration.
Yeah, tree, bank restoration, understory, whatever we feel is appropriate.
Okay, I will also put in the action item about the peer review will be required. And I don't know what I wrote wetland, the wetland delineation, but I feel like by the time I have this drafted, the wetland delineation will already be in my hand, but I will just put that it is due on April 20th. And I would prefer earlier in the day, like for at least for some people to get it. I would like to look at it on the 20th because I think I might be out of the office later.
We got that.
Okay.
We'll do our best to achieve that.
So are we going to be mailed the materials for the April 25th walkthrough?
They'll be
Delivered.
delivered.
I think it's gonna be hand delivered. Weston and Sampson's, I think, is offered to hand deliver the information to.
Hand deliver, okay. All right.
So if you wouldn't mind just letting Lucia know what address is best for you, whether that's a home or a business, we'd be happy to make sure it gets to you.
Thank you.
Is that it for tonight?
I think so.
Does anybody on the outside want to talk about this before we leave the subject? Do I have any hand raises out there?
Any members of the public, if you would wish to speak, please raise your hand now.
I don't see anybody, do you?
No.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank
Is there a
you.
motion to continue?
Move to continue.
Second,
Roll call.
All right, motion to continue until the May hearing made by Mr. Athis, seconded by Vice Chairman Rizzo. Roll call. Chairman Lazaris,
Yes,
Vice Chairman Rizzo,
yes.
Secretary Vivaldi,
Yes.
Commissioner Athis,
Yes.
Commissioner Comac,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
and Commissioner Cavicchio.
Yes.
All right, it's continued.
okay,
Thank you all very much for your time.
thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you.
All right, to continue, item 12, violation order for M&R Trucking. Says here the applicant stated they would file an RDA for the April hearing. We don't have an RDA from them, do we?
No, the consultant had some medical issues and he says he's gonna drop it off tomorrow. I would suggest if he doesn't drop it off tomorrow, the guy hires a new consultant.
Move to
So-
continue.
Yeah.
I have a motion to continue, please.
Motion to continue.
Second,
Seconded.
All right, my pen just ran out of ink, so I can't even write it down, but I will do a roll call. Chairman Lazaris,
yes.
Vice Chairman Rizzo,
Yes.
Secretary Vivaldi,
Yes.
Commissioner Athis,
Yes.
Commissioner Comac,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Cavicchio,
Go in.
I'll just do 6-1 if my pen will work. I don't think it's like a big deal because I feel like he will be submitting paperwork tomorrow to get on the May hearing, so I'm not too
Fine.
concerned about it.
That's fine. I just don't want to spend all night waiting for it, that's all. The last thing on the order on this agenda is number 13, a continued enforcement order issued to Pedro Polini for work done located at 68 Warren Street Extension. So far, there's no update, and I have not heard from anybody, PMLP, city solicitor, as to who owns that land. Have you, Lucia?
No, PMLP was actively corresponding with me, and we left it at some point when we all have time, we'll all meet out there and check it out. I don't think this is going anywhere because of the fact that no one can determine who owns it and no one wants to, so I'll go check it out as soon as I have time. But as you realize, I don't even have time to draft an enforcement
That's
order.
fine. No,
So
that's fine. Just let's do it by correspondence or phone till somebody gets back to us.
well, no, I mean, I want to go, I at some point within the next few weeks, I want to go out and I want to see what's going on out there. I want to see if more if the wall is compromised any.
All right, but I'm saying, but that's just, That's fine. And I would be more than happy to go with you to see it. But it's not, you know, if we have an issue there, we'll have to do something about it, period. You know, in terms of if there's land, if something falls into the river, we'll have to take action at that point. Okay? Let me know when you want to go.
Can I bring up
Other items? Huh?
Oh, through the chair, just before we get to those last items, just like a new business type of thing. So the Salem Country Club enjoys tremendous tax benefits under a plan that the state runs, 61B. What it is to preserve open spaces, your different categories, and they are recreational open space. Now, I don't know, you know, the ins and outs of it, but are there particular requirements? And we maybe should probably ask the city solicitor for this information to investigate, to explore it. Are there particular requirements and standards of practice for an entity to maintain its status as a 61B? Considering what the Salem Country Club did, they really, you know, seem to me to violate that the spirit of the idea of open space and recreational space being provided. So I think that it might be something that we can make as a motion and just forward that inquiry to the city solicitor to see, you know, maybe you know, what their requirements are. There should be some kind of standards. You can't like benefit from the program.
I will personally pursue this with Ann Manning and perhaps Senator Lovely and see if we can get a response real quick on this.
Yeah, my understanding is that they're looking at, my understanding that that Ann was looking at that.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah.
And it's the tax break is a city thing. The 61B is a state thing. So I'll figure out who's gonna do what, but I'll get back to everybody on that one. Okay? And I'll do it before the next meeting through Lucia. All right?
Motion to make a motion to adjourn?
Well,
Accept
first,
the January minutes.
yeah, motion
Yes.
to approve the January minutes, please.
Motion to approve.
Second. Roll call.
You want to just raise your hands? That's fine. All right, thanks, everyone.
Hey,
Great.
Bruce. All right. Motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Raise your hands.
Second.
Good night.
All right, the meeting adjourns at 10:45. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you, PAT.
Ding.